Great. Thank you guys for joining, all the audience and all the speakers. So hope my voice is audible, clear? Thank you. So let's start the day, interesting day. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone from all parts of the world who have registered for a great event happening today. Hope you and your family are doing safe in COVID times. Our best wishes are with all of you. Today we are having a lovely and unique event around the digital world. So if you guys want to know how retail sector will reinvent in the digital world, then you are in the right place. We'll go all over it throughout the day and insights to you. Along with some great talks, we have a power-packed panel discussion themed around reimagining retail with AI technologies, moderated by Sameer Nagpal, CPO Retail, Consumer and Logistics at Infovision. I'm sure it will add a flavor and also provide you deep insight into how to manage customer expectations in the Industry 4.0 era. Now, to begin with, let me introduce myself and the company to you. My name is Nitin Naveen, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm working as Vice President Innovation Strategy at AI CodeSpot. Further, I am joined by my colleague Arvind and Naveen, who will also assist me in keeping the event lively and resolving technical glitches if it comes in between. So thanks to them for putting in hard work and making this one a huge success. We'll try to provide a seamless experience to all of you so that you can gain maximum output out of the same. Let me provide a brief background to all of you about AI CodeSpot. We started last year, backed up by our partner Infovision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7, who is our technology partner. The focus is to provide all of you a deep dive in all the sectors where technology is there. And every month at AI CodeSpot, the theme is different. We're gaining momentum month on month. Our aim is to be number one AI-driven community all over the world so that like-minded people like you all can be a part of the same in supporting, growing, and making it a success. We'll continue to do industry-backed webinars and hybrid events. The knowledge repository will be made from real data through industry leaders, subject matter experts, thought leaders, and our partners Infovision and Digit7. We'll enrich the content through videos, blogs, podcasts, newsletters, and digital content, shed light on the ever-evolving industry. Our mission is to serve as a hub for information regarding Industry 4.0 technologies, which includes AI, ML, deep learning, digital twin, AR, VR, IoT, robotics, blockchain, 5G, drone, analytics, AI, computing, cloud, and list goes on. Today's event is one series of events which we have planned for this year. It's powered with speakers' presentations and panel discussions themed around role of technology to act as an enabler in the retail sector. There are lots more in store for subsequent months as well, with focus on testing, banking, financial, insurance, telecom, retail, healthcare, supply chain, manufacturing, and we will keep on adding the industries as and when the demand is there for the Industry 4.0. So request all of you to go to our website, aicorespot.io, for further updates. Also, please like our social media handles, which will keep you all updated on everything what we propose to offer in the coming months to follow. So before starting with the day, I would like to highlight few things so that it can set up the tone for the amazing learning and networking day. A special mention about our knowledge and innovation partner, Infovision, an end-to-end IT and business service provider specializing in providing technology transformation and innovation projects for 25 years across multiple industries. With over 3,000 technology professionals working across 12 global locations, including US, Latin America, Middle East, and India, and serving over 65 customers across banking, financial services, telecom, media, retail, consumer goods, healthcare, manufacturing industries. The core services offerings include digital engineering services comprising of cloud, big data, analytics, DevOps, application services, legacy modernization, digital quality assurance, mobile, API, microservices, social media research, analysis, and cybersecurity. Also have a unique state-of-the-art research and innovation lab named Digit7 in Richardson, Texas, with 4 great products, which includes DGrab, DigitShells, TaskSquare, and FlyRobo. The beauty about all the 4 products which I just mentioned is that they are customizable, cost-effective, and can be used in every industry where technology is needed. This all enables InfoVision as a complete entity to collaborate with their clients to conceive new disruptive digital ideas, develop, implement, and deploy solutions in an agile manner, leveraging latest digital technologies. Amongst others, with the search of digital disruption, they have been making significant investments over the past 8 years to develop cutting-edge products and come up with quality ones. Further, InfoVision has delivered success to some of the top banks, including Citi, Capital One, Barclays, BBVA, Oryx, and many Fortune 500 clients. Some retail clients include 7-Eleven, and there are many other clients like Samsung, Verizon, through which they help them unlock innovation pockets, leveraging mobile digital wallets, blockchain, AR/VR, IoT, to address the latest evolving needs of their customers. Some of the key strategic end-to-end projects which they have is My Verizon mobile app development, 7Now mobile app, which are used by millions of consumers on a daily basis. With their strong technology capabilities and delivery expertise, I'm confident that they can help anyone in their transformation journey. Technology needs to be future-proof, but model and excellence into one's end consumer experience. So to get in touch with them, kindly log on to their website, which is information.com, and leave your details to contact us section. Now moving on and coming to our community partners for today. It includes a great list of companies, which has REI, Lovelock Companies Limited, Johnson & Johnson, Humex North America, M-Source IDS, Trivia Group, Sterling Marketing Group, and Right Data Consultants, who came together to make this event a success. A special mention to speakers and attendees of the event who registered and came today to achieve their objectives to this forum. At the end of the day, if you gain a few things out of this or get to network with each other, then our core objective as a platform will be achieved. Further, if anyone wants to ask questions, they can type in the Q&A section, which is there at the right corner of the menu option. You can type in as and when the speaker speaks, and we'll try to get answered after each talk or in between also as per the time permitted. There is also a hands button at the bottom of the screen, through which you can even raise the hand and come to the stage to ask questions to the speakers as well. So now, let's start the day, guys. Let me hand over the stage to Lionel Binney, who is the CEO from M-Source Data Ideas. He has an exciting topic. The future of retail is omni-channel. Why e-commerce and physical retail need each other. I'm sure this first topic will set up the flavor of the day. Over to you, Lionel.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And you're going to do the slides, correct?
Sure. We'll set up your slide.
Okay. So I'm actually the topic of how retail sector will reinvent a digital world. I would like to mention that, of course, that we know it's been reinventing for the last 25 plus years, which doesn't need to be said, but we're in a massive transformation that's started, with Amazon, really. Okay, so I've got to watch the time, so I will make sure I don't run over. So next slide.
Your presentation is
okay. I can see that. Yeah. So I'm gonna. My presentation will talk a lot about the interaction between e-commerce and physical retail, and which, as a lot of people have started to call it, omni-channel. People don't like the term omni-channel. They think it's just another jargon. But I've done a lot of research, and I think that term is being used a lot. And I think it's a good enough term to talk about e-commerce and physical retail. Okay, next slide, please. So this is Marshall McLuhan, who is a Canadian media theorist who reached a lot of fame in the 1960s. His most famous slogan is "Medium is the message." But his books are amazing. He predicted a lot of the ways that electronic media would change our lives way back in the 60s. So this is a quote from him: "A new medium is never an addition to an old one, nor does it leave the old one in peace. it never ceases to oppress the older media until it finds new shapes and positions for them. So I apply that to how, what that really means throughout the last 120 years since the sort of electronic era has come to us. Each time a new technology arose, it didn't completely eliminate the previous form. It just found a new position for them. So if you think performance music, and then the record music came along, like records. So there's still we can still attend live concerts. Of course, recorded music is important. Then the radio came along and it displaced recorded music up to a point. The movies replaced live plays up to a point. Broadway still exists. Live performances, theatrical performances still exist. Television displaced movies and radio up to a point, but of course, radio and movies still exist, and on and on. So to me, e-commerce is the newest version of that. So e-commerce has come along, and yes, it's replaced or has largely supplanted many aspects of retail, but it's basically forced physical retail to go into new positions and to have new purposes. So to me, that's an important concept. As new media and new forms come, they don't completely eliminate the previous forms, but they do, in fact, reshape them in large ways. Next slide, please. So this is my book. I really tried to think hard about what retail does, and I came up with this. There are two aspects of shopping: discovery and fulfillment. So before the internet, most discovery of products, you just went to the store. The store was where you discovered things, and you usually just transacted there. I mean, they had Consumer Report magazine, or you might have asked your friends and neighbors, what's a good lawnmower or whatever, or a good stereo system to buy. But discovery was mostly happening in physical retail, and the transactions, which I call fulfillment, happened in the store. But the internet has broken those two aspects apart. It's unbundled those two aspects so that, discovery can happen online. Of course, many categories of products, we love to learn about online. You can read reviews, etc. But also, especially for some types of products, more sort of sensory type products, want to discover those, in a store, like we were talking about clothing earlier. Hard to discover the perfect sweater just on seeing a pixelated screen, and you can't touch it, feel it, see the color accurately. And fulfillment means, the transaction, paying for it and getting it. You could do that. Of course, online fulfillment means delivery normally. But, fulfillment, the transaction can happen online or offline. So I think, it's helpful to understand that this is being disaggregated and unbundled because of the internet. Next slide, please. So this is from my book, and I don't want to get into this too heavily, but I think it's relevant. So my book, I have a framework, a matrix model I created where I analyze products across two axes. So this is the horizontal axis. Homogeneous products are sort of mass-produced products where they're what, and it can also apply to technical products where you can pretty much understand what you're getting by seeing it online and reading reviews. Heterogeneous products are more unique products. The best example of that would be a sort of handcrafted item or an oil painting or a vintage piece of clothing, something that's very unique and very hard to find or search online in some ways. Next slide, please. And then this is the other act. So lowering it at the bottom refers to our emotional commitment to that product. Often has to do with how expensive it is, of course, high engagement, possibly a product that we're going to keep for a long time, like a car or a house. But, many people care a lot about food, food shopping. If you're a chef, that's very important to you. So that is the high engagement aspect. Next slide, please. So I tried to put these two together. Next slide. Into this combo. The 4 quadrants here. In the top left is things that are more homogeneous, like a Swiss watch or a laptop computer, but they're high engagement. We care a lot about them. The bottom left quadrant of that would be a can of soup. You know what canned chicken soup is, but it's not that important. And on the bottom right are what I call artisan products, which could be sort of cheese, wine, something that you want to sample. A lot of fresh food would come into this category. So these lower engagement but heterogeneous, mean they're unique, and you might want to experience them in person. And on the top right top right is an oil painting, which would be completely unique, and you would want to experience that in person. And I guess you could buy a Matisse online, but So this is an imperfect, attempt at sort of mapping types of products that want to be purchased online that are more conducive, and those fall in the bottom left to some extent, mundane. And the types of products that people really want to interact with. Next slide, please. And this just maps it out again. So anyway, if you're interested, you can read more of my book. And I'm not trying to plug my book, but of course I kind of am. Next slide, please. So, just to back up, I am going to jump around quite a lot, but this is sort of my method of explaining ideas, is I like to jump around a lot. And, there's stuff flow here, but hopefully you can get some of the point I'm trying to make. But, basically, it's very hard to be found online. Over 800,000 online stores. So how to get found? Well, guess what? You have to pay Google, or you have to pay Amazon. I guess it's getting more and more expensive. You have to pay for Facebook ads. So, the price of being found online is increasing a lot. So it's hard to be found online, and it doesn't happen automatically. You have to have very good SEO. You have to have great digital advertising. Next slide, please. So a lot of these brands like Warby Parker and Casper mattresses and Harry's, they started online only. They were conceived as digital-only businesses, e-commerce-only businesses. But they, and that worked for a while, but they found that the use of physical retail, whether it was selling wholesale through other stores like Casper mattresses has been featured in Target, Harry's razors now found in Target, Walmart, etc. Warby Parker that started online and shipping you glass frames to try on. They now have over 100 stores, and found that actually people are much more comfortable in ways trying on glass frames in the store. They want to, they'd like a salesperson to tell them that this looks good on them, and they need to get the prescription fit anyway. And guess what? Shipping 5 pairs of frames to people and having them shipped back to try on, which is their model, is incredibly expensive. So, and Warby Parker has found that out. So, they are, these are very classic now omni-channel brands. Next slide, please. These are some other examples of this. So there's lots of ways. Omni-channel is really about manufacturers partnering with retailers and consumers. So manufacturers like Thule makes the bike racks and the luggage carriers on cars. They don't sell direct to consumers. They support their dealers, physical store retailers, and give them information. And then if people look for their products, they help consumers find the local store that has that product in stock. So, this is omni-channel, where manufacturers are deciding very carefully what channel they want to work with, which retail partners they need, and supporting them, and not treading on the toes, direct to consumer. So there's many ways that manufacturers, brands can work with retailers that have been developed. Next slide, please. Brooks Running Gear out of Seattle. They are participant in this conference that worked for REI. Will know a lot about Brooks, probably a lot more than I do. But they work with small dealers. I don't know if they sell through REI, but they help their small dealers and they drop ship. So the small one-two dealers don't have to carry every style, every size. People can go in and find the style they like, make sure it fits. And then if they want a unusual color or a unique color, Brooks will drop ship to the consumer. So the independent retailers can act as showrooms and the brand multipliers for the manufacturer. And of course, this is not really necessarily new. This happened pre-internet, but these types of tight relationships are, I think, going to be the future. Next slide, please. And Best Buy, I know one of our panelists has worked with Best Buy, as she mentioned. So Best, and again, you'll probably know much more about this than I do, but they are extremely good at omni-channel. They are essentially within reach of most of the U.S. population. 70% live within 15 minutes of the store. So, and the brands like Samsung and Panasonic and Soft, they pay for the salespeople in Spy stores to showcase the product, inform and educate consumers about products, and they're very careful to price that. So they're very careful to make sure that they're not underpriced by Amazon and other big players. And also the fact that they have these physical stores within reach of a huge part of the U.S. population means that they can ship directly from the store. So in some ways, they have a leg up on Amazon because they have essentially warehouses all over the U.S. already. So again, it's nothing that profound. It's in some ways it's quite obvious, but there was a time when people assumed Best Buy was done. They were done, like Circuit City folded. Circuit City didn't move fast enough to understand what was happening with e-commerce. Best Buy did, and they're very successful. Slide, please. So my prediction is that brands will usually launch online, and as they gain traction, they'll try different test marketing from pop-ups, through in-store installations, and maybe they'll open their own stores. But most consumer brands will be omnichannel. They are going to want to have a physical presence. Of course, there are exceptions to that. So food delivery, of course, very huge during COVID. Now coming back down. I don't have all the percentages and statistics like what it was during COVID and how much it's changed, but for sure, yes, there was a time during COVID when grocery delivery, food delivery was massive. And yes, it did accelerate a lot of people's adoption of that. So it's incredibly significant. Hard to make money, though, delivery for the grocer. Slide, please. That's, I kind of said that already, but, basically stores are showrooms. The function of stores is changing to some degree to be showrooms, experiential places where people can discover brands. Next slide, please. So this is I use some of these slides to teach. Some of these are just visual. These are examples of what physical sort of dynamic shopping environments look like. That top left of people shopping used vinyl records. Yes, you can do that online, of course, but there's something about interacting, like a used bookstore. There's something about interacting with vintage products, which are completely unique in many ways. that is stimulating and fun in a physical environment. The bottom left is a woman shopping for yarn, for knitting. So that's an example of, the fabric, the top of the yarn and the color, the exact color is pretty important to be done in person. If you, a real artist or a real craftsperson. Next, please. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about Amazon a little bit more. Now, Amazon realizes that you can say more than anybody. I mean, that is us as a brilliant business person, obviously. And, they acquired Whole Foods in 2017. So they know better than anyone how important physical retail is and having product very close to consumers. They have failed, really, quite clearly failed at being a high-end retailer, a prestige sort of status retailer that have not been able to sell high-end brands. There's something about, Amazon and getting it in a box that does not make for a luxury experience. Now, I will definitely acknowledge there are exceptions to that. You can order a Swiss watch, online and have it delivered. There's something about the cachet going to a boutique and buying a Gucci bag or a Kate Spade bag or something that Amazon just can't quite replicate. And even Nike has parted ways with Amazon. Nike can't be found. I mean, I'm sure there is some great Nike product on Amazon, but they tried to do a deal with Amazon where if they, in exchange for Amazon trying very hard to get rid of their gray market dealers that sell sub products or product that close out, and clean that up. So then, in exchange for which Nike would partner with Amazon, but Amazon was not effective at stopping, second products, second market products being sold. So it's bad for Nike's brand. So Nike is partnered with Amazon. So that's another angle on this. Next slide, please. So, and in one sense, Amazon is not really a retailer. You could say they're really an advertising platform and a logistics platform. It's a consumer-focused ecosystem. And, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they're not really a curator in the sense of a traditional retailer. A traditional retailer, a big part of their function is to curate all the products in a category and then pick the best, and then, make that available. But, basically Amazon is very much about your data and about, getting a bigger piece of the pie, understandably. Next slide, please. And they're really taking a page. Actually, go one more slide, and then I'll go back to the slide. Next slide. Skip this. Yeah, here we go. So then, back one. There you go. So yeah, so Amazon is taking a page from Jack Ma's Alibaba playbook, where they've created a whole, almost like an entire ecosystem where a consumer wouldn't have to leave that ecosystem. With finance, which is their anchor, Tmall, they have physical malls. I'm not completely expert on this, but they basically want to have an entire system, including entertainment. And go back one slide. No, back. There you go. Thanks. So the Amazon search bar is not simply a means of navigating customers to what Amazon sells. It's a market research tool that informs Amazon in real time what it should consider selling. So, the data that comes back from, Amazon is, of course, informing what they're selling. So, Amazon is really in the consumer data business. And, they would like to lock people in, not just consumers, but the entire industry into their ecosystem. They have Prime Video from Amazon, they make hardware, Amazon Fire TV, Alexa. So that vision is to have a whole consumer ecosystem that people sort of shop and live within. And, as Jack Ma did with Alibaba. So, next slide, please. Actually, skip more. These are just, yeah, good one. Next. Some of these are just images. So Mark Andreessen, who created one of the early browsers that really launched the internet, I think it was the one that made images able to travel through the internet. Andreessen Horowitz, he's now a major capital guy. And, he's a brilliant guy. He's a real futurist. So he said in 2011, software is eating the world. And then, of course, to some degree, that's true. But he also predicted that all shopping would go online and that, basically all commerce is going to go online. So I just think I think that we're now coming into an era where we're realizing that is not the case. We're seeing the limitations of some of these e-commerce models. And I think that's close to the truth. Next slide, please. And this is an article on Forbes last week. The malls are really bouncing back post-COVID, especially the top malls. There's an amazing platform called Placer.ai that tracks anonymized data, location data from 100 million US digital devices using their GPS data. So basically, tracking where people, because everyone brings their phone with them, right, wherever they go. So using that GPS data, there's amazing analysis that could be done about where people are actually going, which stores they're going to, which categories of retail have a lot of traffic. And the fact is that people are going back to malls, and malls, in many cases, many of the malls' traffic is better than it was pre-COVID. So, this is, to me, quite interesting. By the way, if in the larger sense of AI, which I know your platform is about, Placer.ai is amazing at location data, physical location data. Retailers use it to track the effectiveness of marketing programs, and they can track whether the traffic picked up the day after a TV ad or something. Interesting stuff. Like AI, I think it's an Israeli company. Next slide, please. There you go. I might be going too fast, but I guess that will leave more time for discussion. Next slide, please. So yeah, the sort of conclusion, of my book and where what I'm sort of really dwelling on here is that there are two, to oversimplify massively, there are two types of shopping. So for mundane products, that's a quadrant concept, where so for certain types of basic products, we know pretty much what we're going to get if we order it online. Like a cell phone charger or maybe a brand of clothing that we bought for, like socks, something basic. We're very happy to buy it online. It saves us the chore, dog food, whatever, paper towels. Very happy to order it, get it delivered. It's time well saved. Whereas time well spent, the physical experience, social experience of going shopping with friends and family, going out to eat, going to the movies, this is time well spent. And the typical retail shopping environments, this need of entertainment and experience, that time well spent shopping is clearly not going away. And so if retailers have to, if they want to be viable, physical retailers have to understand the experiential entertainment aspect, the time well spent aspect, and the good ones do understand it. Next slide, please. And that is a minor plug for my book. And thank you. That's my contact information. I'm happy to talk to anyone that's interested in reaching out. Any of this stuff, I love talking about it, as you can tell. And that is it. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laniel. Thank you for the lovely presentation and setting up the tone for this wonderful event. Obviously, your topic was future of retail is omni-channel. I think you talked about it in a detailed way, why e-commerce and physical retail meet each other. Thank you. Thank you for your thought process.
Thank you.
Any questions, guys? Any questions you have, you can type it in the Q&A section, which is there on the right side of your menu option. We'll just wait for 1 minute. Otherwise, we'll just start our next presenter. So our next thing is panel discussion, guys. So in case you have any questions, you can type it in the Q&A section. There are a few guys who have joined late. So just I was letting you introduce in the morning about what AI CoSpot is, who are our partners. And the last thing which I told is about the Q&A section. Okay, in case you have any questions, you can type it in the Q&A section and our speakers will be happy to help you out. You type as and when the speaker speaks so that time is saved because of that. Thank you, Adi. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your presentation and hope to stay connected with you and have a lovely holiday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm
Thanks a lot.
happy to dialogue anyone on the panel. I'm to network with you all.
Yes, please, you can be there, no issues. So I'll quickly introduce all the panel members who are here so that the audience can get introduced to the speakers and then we can take it forward from here. So guys, it's a 1-hour panel discussion. The topic is reimagining retail with AI technologies. So in the panel discussion, we have great speakers. So I'll start with who is the moderator of this panel discussion, then I'll move to the other speakers who are there, part of this. So we have Sameer Napal, who is Chief Business Officer, Retail, Consumer and Logistics at Infovision. Then we have Harvinder, who is AVP Client Partner, Retail at Infovision. And then we have Meena, who is Founder and CEO of Reinvent Group. We have Anand, who is Revenue Growth Management at Johnson & Johnson. Then we have Michelle Barron, Director of Sales and Operations, Hume South America. Then we have Kieran Tiber, who's founder, Sterling Marketing Group. And then we have Matthew Skeffer, Senior Manager, Data and Content Operations Program in REI. So I'll hand it over to Sameer to do the talking and to take this panel discussion forward. Over to you, Sameer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. And team, welcome to the panel discussion. Chaitanya, if you can just switch our video on, I think that would be awesome, please. Okay, that's better. So, team, I think we heard a very, very thoughtful presentation from one of our team members, and it was all about omnichannel. I think I was supposed to introduce, but I think Nitin has already done that, so I don't want to spend more time. But I just want to start the discussion on providing some insight or some data points, I would say. I was going through some article, or I would say the survey, and as per the survey, almost like 80% of the customers are changing the way they are doing the shopping right now. 60% of the customer are visiting store less as compared to the before COVID scenario. 43% of the consumers are buying online products. This is additional 43% than what they were doing 2 years back. The other thing which we can tell is the geographical locations have become completely irrelevant. I think people just need an internet for doing a lot of stuff out there. And I think the last but not the least, 26% of the respondents plan to live in a less densely populated area, which is up by almost 10% as compared to April 2020. That's some of the demographics and some data points in terms of how the people are changing behavior in shopping, and this is what COVID has done for us. The other, on the technology side, I'll just give you some data point. In 3 months, from May to July 2020, there was an investment of $10 billion in terms of e-commerce with acquisitions or partnerships, which was done by most of the retailers out there. There were a concept that we never heard of, which is like ghost kitchens, which is basically a kitchen which is not entertaining any walk-in customers. It's more about food which can be deployed or served to your home. We also heard about dark stores. Dark stores, I'm just here talking about the concept. Dark stores are actually the distribution centers which are doubling up as a store, which is only getting the online sales out there. So I'm just saying those are some of those ideas. And then there's one data point I also got: 37% of the population people are going to spend more time on BOPIS in the next 2 years' time. 37 additional people. So BOPIS, I'll just BOPIS is buy and pick up in store. So I think that's one thing. So having said that, we are seeing a big transition in the buying patterns from the people. So this is just a data point, and I would start the panel discussion with this one. I would actually ask a question to, let's say, I'll start with Matthew. Matthew, what do you think is going to kind of bring or at least help us building the same customer experience, or getting the customers back into the store, or providing the kind of experience that they used to get in stores through an omni-channel experience?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question and something that a lot of companies are wrestling with today. At REI, I think our approach is to look at the customer experience and the broader customer journey as holistically as possible, and to understand what makes sense when. I think the goal from a digital standpoint is to build our content and our offers in a way that we can distribute it to any channel, anytime, based on what we know about the customer. So I mean, that essentially is that idea of relevant content. And so if a customer is out riding their bike and they need some information about a trail, we want to be able to make that available to them in a mobile device. Whereas if they're doing research online, we want to give them an inspiring experience on a desktop or a mobile phone, or provide, the information about our products or our classes and events that they're looking for in that model. But we also want to integrate them into the store experience. I think to Lyle's point earlier, there's this spectrum of products that customers are shopping for, and that really determines how they shop to some extent. And so if a customer is looking for a bike or a kayak, we want to give this experience where they can research online and then have seamless shift to the store. Maybe they can take their phone into the store, show this to one of our green vests, one of our sales associates, have them find exactly what they were looking for, and just make this entire process as seamless as possible. I think, like most companies, we're learning into this, and it's an iterative process. But I think more and more going forward will be those barriers between digital and brick and mortar and kind of legacy shopping models dissolve.
Matthew, just to ask one more question on top of it, and I think this can be open to everybody else also. What are the various trends, or what are things that you are seeing in terms of technology solutions that people are putting in place to enable this kind of the kind of omni-channel experience and all those? And I'll start with you, but I'll open it for other team member also. If you can start, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my areas of focus right now is how do we construct our content, and content's a big umbrella. So how do we build the messaging and the product information and the inspirational information and the learning information that we have for customers in a way that it can be distributed anywhere we want to show it to them. So we want to be able to put it in media, on social. We want to be able to show it on desktop and mobile, on browsers. We want to show it in the app and email, but we don't want to recreate those experiences for each different channel separately. That's a waste of time, effort, and ultimately money for our team. So for us, one of the focus, how do we build that content, augment it with metadata, standardize it to whatever extent needs to be standardized, so that we can increasingly have business rules and ultimately algorithms start making the decisions of what content goes where and start pairing those experiences with customers based on what we know about them through their customer data. So that's one of our focuses, is really building these relevant experiences across channels at scale.
So, Michelle, I would like to kind of understand from you a little bit, because I think he mentioned something. If you can throw some light on what are the trends that you're seeing, so some of the likes and dislikes that you're seeing from a customer perspective in the market right now.
One thing I'd like to actually bring to the table before I get to that question is almost one thing that's very interesting is customers need to discover new products. And how do customers discover products that they don't know they need? Because now that I'm on the manufacturing side versus the retailing side of how to bring new brands and items to market, how do those new items get discovered? I'd love to play around with Matthew a little bit here on this, because when I go into an REI, because I'm a big hiker, camper, outdoor consumer, the one thing that I as a consumer like about an REI store is I'm going to walk in and I'm going to discover a lot of things that I didn't know exist. And that's one of the things I struggle with as a consumer, is how do I do that just digitally? And I think that's something that we, both the manufacturer as well as the retailer, have to come together to figure that out. It's really, really important. That's going to drive new products, which is, I'm one of those working on the manufacturer side now. But also we have to continue to ask the customer, when they, what do they need? What do they need to discover? What do they like? And that's where I think this omni-channel struggles a little bit, and we're trying to figure that out, because the items that you didn't know you need are the ones that are most exciting. The dog food that I already know what my Betty is going to eat is not exciting, and I'll do every day, possibly just through omni-channel. But I want to know about these new products. I want to know what that customer needs, how we can actually bring it to life digitally, or can that not happen because that needs to be that in-store experience. And so something like an REI, then that in-store experience has to be definitely different than what the digital is. If it's not different, there's no reason to go into that store.
True. So, Karen, I have a point of view out here. In fact, since Michelle was talking about what could be things that can be put in place, whether it is as part of the social media or marketing campaigns, how do we ensure that the customers are getting the right information first of all to make that right decisions, both online and in stores? I know if they go to store, there's a lot of things out there, but is there something that we can do to kind of enhance this kind of experience to the retail industry?
Well, it's interesting. I deal a lot with retailers, but I also deal a lot with, for example, real estate agents. And we have something we call in real estate porn. And that's where all they do on their social is show these pictures of beautiful houses, right? But that's not really effective social media. And I think a lot of retailers are falling into that same category, which is they show pictures on social media of beautiful, whatever their products are. But that isn't really what consumers want. Consumers want more of an experience, even online, even in social. So part of with social, what's important, the way social can seamlessly integrate between, this online and then this brick and mortar world, is by knowing really clearly what the brand is. And you'd be really shocked how many retailers really don't actually understand what the brand really is about. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but a lot of them are so product focused, they haven't really thought through what is that bigger story of the brand. And so by knowing that bigger story, you can do things, for example, like give behind the scenes looks. People, we know that behind the scene looks really give a lot of engagement and can drive a lot of people both to the online retailer and to the physical retailer, right? The other thing is that you really have to be doing what we call the 80-20 rule in social media, which means only 20% is actually promoting your product. 80% is promoting the underlying brand themes, the lifestyle. So just use REI as an example. Matthew, you're getting a lot of shout outs today because obviously we're all big hikers, campers, skiers, whatever. But just to give you an example, I went on a trip in last October to Italy on a biking trip. And I had never done a full trip like that. So I had to go buy some additional biking equipment. So I went to REI, but I didn't go online. I went with a friend who's a big biker, and we said, let's go to REI. So we went in the store, and to Michelle's point, I wanted to see the color. By the way, color, and one of the things I am is a color strategist. Color is an incredibly big problem for online retailers because colors do not look the same.
Correct.
No one's cracked that technology yet. Colors do not look the same online as they do physically. And that's a huge issue and a huge problem, but that's a whole other separate thing that nobody's cracked. Yeah, they will, but they haven't cracked it yet. So we go into the REI store, and we're first thing, of course, because I'm a color strategist, I'm looking at, well, no, those are nice bike shorts, but I don't like that color. So what other colors do they come in, right? So there's that whole thing. But the point was that I had looked at some of the social for REI, and I looked at some of the social for other companies, and it was who I got a feeling from. Not where I said, oh, I like that pair of bike shoes. Oh, I like that helmet. It's more that who I got a feeling from, and then I went into the store. But the other thing is that somehow we have to find a way. No one's cracked this one either, both in social and in the online experience, of being able to have that experience of it being a social experience. So, a lot of times I will say to a girlfriend, oh, let's go have lunch at the mall. And because I live in New York, let's go have lunch here, and then we can go to that store, right? So you can't do that online right now. You cannot shop online with your girlfriend right now, or your boyfriend right now, or your friend, in a social way online. You can do that in a physical location. You can't do that online. And so social media has a really important part to play, but it's not in promoting the product. It's in creating that bigger brand feel so that customers get a sense of who that company is, and then driving people to the appropriate place. And the appropriate place, much to the point of the first speaker, is not necessarily online or offline. It depends. It depends on what you're buying. It depends on why you're shopping. It depends on what you're looking for. It depends on how important accuracy of color is. I do a lot of shopping with CEOs when they have to do media interviews, right? So I meet them in a physical store. I pull clothes from a rack. I have them try clothes on in the dressing room, because you get an immediate visual feeling of, how does that item look? How is it going to be on them, right? And so I think it's that the social isn't just for one purpose. The social has to drive in an interdimensional way.
Thank you. Hey, Karen, just one point on that one, since you mentioned that when you're doing CEO, you go into the store and pull the clothes from the rack. So I'm just this is open for everyone again. Do you think that we are close to? I think someone in the earlier session, I think we mentioned Magic Mirror. We spoke about AR, VR experiences and all those things. I think, are we close? And Matthew, since you are the person from the apparel side of the world, I'm just trying to figure out, is there any way that people are working towards the AR, VR experiences, the extended reality, and so on and so forth? I'm trying to open this, and then probably I'll go to Anand, because he comes from a different world. Probably Anand, I'll come to you later on. But let's try to answer this question first.
I'll let Matthew answer, but I'll just say, because I'm in a lot of stores a lot, and I'm in everything from the top, most exclusive stores to, Macy's, the most common stores. I haven't seen any of that technology in any of those stores in the U.S. personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and I would follow that up and say this is an area where I think we haven't cracked the nut for a lot of products, apparel being one of them, because there's such a variety. At REI, we have a private brand, but we also sell products from a wide variety of outfitters and companies. And that creates all kinds of problems, even when we're getting the product information to put online. And there's so much variation. Having some standardized experience is an ongoing challenge, and it takes a lot of time and effort to kind of clean our data and standardize our data. And I think in the case of apparel, that's something that I don't know that we necessarily are ever going to get away from the need to try something on and see how it fits and see how it looks on you, because that's an important part of an apparel decision. I think there are other products that are much easier online, but there are also products on the other end of the spectrum, like a bike or a kayak or a tent, where you really want to have that physical interaction with the product, especially when it's bigger scale. And so we're doing things like for tents, we're doing some augmented reality where you can see how a sleep bag fits inside a tent, and you can do these different kind of spacing and sizing things online, and get a sense of some of those important components of a purchasing decision. But really, a lot of that is targeted in helping people figure out if it makes sense to go into a store and continue their research, or if they need to go on a different path and do some more work online. But ultimately, we're looking at what is this holistic experience, and how do we bring it all together. I think AR is a new piece of that. Mm-hmm. It works with some things, but I think apparel is a place where we can have a lot of opportunities.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, please. Please go ahead.
Samir, I would just add, I think it all depends on the kind of products we are talking about or what we are trying to sell. I totally agree with what Karen mentioned and Matthew mentioned. And I think replacing your in-person is definitely something which is very hard, that kind of thing. However, I think we are maybe in the early stage of our technology maturity, but I'll give you a couple of examples where we as a company have been working with some customers. To take an example, if you are at a lakeside, you have executives or again some people coming in that site, and you want to show them your products. Okay, creating a virtual store by just scanning a QR code and getting that clear look and feel where you are having an interaction, not a static store created. And in the next version where even you have a physical device in your hand and trying to compare those with whatever you're seeing virtually, I think that kind of experience is getting evolved. I mean, it's in an early stage. We definitely have to see how things evolve, but a lot of advancements are happening in this area. You will see this immersive experience will come along and probably change the industry, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, and just one quick follow-up to that. I think what we're going to see is a lot of different companies doing different tests and trying different things to see what works for them, because the reality is testing some of these ideas is a lot easier than scaling them, making them available across the whole product line or across your whole business. And so I think we're going to continue to see a lot of people trying different things and innovating in different ways, but the things that actually go to become common experiences and things that we can deliver at scale, there's a big lift in just creating the content and the experiences across the big product line. That is a barrier to entry for a lot of companies.
So totally agree, Matthew. That's a very valid point. This is where I think when you're looking at the architecture of solutioning, you have open architecture, you think about product and platform upfront rather than, I think, later point of time. So yeah, you're totally right. I think scaling is the big thing which everybody has to focus on and think how to design those things together.
Anand, since you come from a slightly different side of the world, I just wanted to get your views in how is Johnson & Johnson kind of responding to the shift that we are seeing in the consumer behavior over the period of time?
Absolutely, and it's a very interesting question on how really what we have been talking today. When you look at the trends which are changing, one thing just kind of coming up is given the amount of choice that consumers have, given the amount of access and reach consumers have, we as consumers are becoming more finicky, if I can use that word, right? It's easy for me to go try and send the things back if I don't see it fit in my daily life, right? And as we're talking about, the experiences have to be uniform across channel, whether it's online, offline, the brand story and all of those concepts. Now, when you just take it back from the overall organization perspective, this digital has to run through the entire organization. It cannot be that I have that experience, I can give the products to the retailers, but internally I'm not able to adjust my processes, adjust my offerings to be able to do that. Like I'll give just a simple example here, and then I'll come to what AJ. When you go to buy a bottle of shampoo, for example, a supplement, when you go on an aisle, whether it's in-store or online, the variety which is available is huge. And it is super confusing for a consumer on what is good, what is not, what works, what does not work. So it all starts with how can you simplify the offering and have that brand story built into what you're doing? What is the purpose that you have, right? And it starts from there, and then the purpose kind of percolates into who you are as an organization. And besides the online interactions and all that we have, it's more to do with getting the right leadership place. Start educating the employees to make sure they understand this transition which is happening, right? It's not easy for this kind of a transformation. Transformations are always difficult, but digital transformation has been, in my experience so far, the most difficult to handle. And the second one which comes in is how do the leadership teams define where to use this technology, right? It's very easy to spray technology across the organization, and that's a disaster waiting to happen where you spend tons of money and not get returns and start to declare this technology is not going to work. Instead, it has to be the other way around, and that's what we're doing. You have to be very purposeful on using technology as a tool to obtain the results that you're trying to obtain, right?
Yeah.
That's really where we are going. So it's a really strategic discussion that we have had on end to end who we are, what we want to do, what are the processes where we want to digitize. There's some processes which you don't want to digitize for various reasons. Start training your employees, give them the freedom to play with. We have what we have done here is to almost all the employees we run a program where we give them $10,000 to try out different technologies, and this has worked wonderfully in our manufacturing space, where $10,000 can get you a lot of IoT tools or AI and all of the other small computers, the microchips and the microcomputers, where they go and work, and it drives massive efficiency without need of having massive volumes. And with that, you can drive agility in the business to be able to service the retail stores in a way which is cost effective, quick and agile, and responsive to the changing needs. Like REI would be experiencing like a trend day is gone. What used to last for a year, or a fashion week used to last for a year, now it lasts literally for a week. We are seeing, and this is leading to proliferation of options and products within the organization, which is increasing the cost. The cost of complexity is huge, and we undermine that. And that is where the entire thread has to be. So it starts with the portfolio management on brand story, purposeful investment in digital, education of the employees, and then giving them that freedom to fail fast, fail forward, to keep moving the organization ahead.
Thank you, Anand. And I think we were talking about retailer and we don't talk about Amazon. I think that's something which probably doesn't sound right, right? So, Meena, with your experience on Amazon, what trends are you seeing? What are getting adopted by the people in Amazon, or the people who are buying stuff on Amazon?
So I think post-COVID, everyone is now shifting over to Amazon. So I remember the period pre-COVID where we saw a lot of retailers still very resistant to Amazon. But then once everything shut down, everyone was forced to make a decision either to build their entire direct-to-consumer stores, which was incredibly complex because you have to have a customer experience and drive traffic and prove to the customer that you're going to ship it on time. Or you can just bring your products up to Amazon. On the seller side, it's incredibly simple, right? All you have to do is set up a detail page with the right SEO, right content, and then send the products to Amazon. As Amazon takes care of all the logistics. And on the shopper side, you get everything in 1 to 2 days. You are protected of any purchase you make. You have up to 30 days to return it. And so they've really mastered the shopping experience for customers. And I think that's what everyone needs to start focusing on as well on the direct-to-consumer side. Is the reason that Amazon is winning so much is because of how the customer experience is. And I don't think there's ever going to be a time where you can win Amazon without providing an equal or better experience. And so the trends that we're seeing with shoppers is pre-Amazon, it used to be that, or pre-COVID, it used to be that Amazon was 10% of retail, and now it's more like 50 or 60% of all online retail is happening on Amazon because they're making it so easy to sell and because of the pleasant customer experience. And so I think that's a big lesson that we can learn from them, is they're constantly understanding the shopping journey through your behavior. They're always curating what to show you. Their search results are amazing. They make it very easy for you to compare different products and see what's a good fit for you. And so it's like going to the store, where you see a bunch of different products, but it's even better because you get to see reviews and you can see videos on how people are using them. And there's, different descriptions and frequently asked questions all in one place. And I think that is the epitome of like the perfect customer experience.
Thank you, Mina. Mina, just
If I may jump in, Samir.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
If I may just jump in with just a quick comment there. It's interesting. You talked about sort of Amazon and sort of this ecosystem that they've essentially built, both for the seller and the buyer, obviously, and this sort of very sticky experience essentially for both, whether in a way or a bad way. It really depends on our perspective. But what's interesting is that juxtaposing that against the experience of Shopify, right? So Shopify is being sort of call it. I like to akin it to the Samsung of the phones, and sort of the iPhone being the Amazon, which is this ecosystem that's you have to buy into. And it's interesting when you look at it that way, that Shopify gives you the ability to actually have your storefront be digital and all these other pieces around the platform. What it doesn't do, however, is the end-to-end fulfillment. And so the experience that you talked about is not just about the UX, right? It's not the button and the way that the website looks. In fact, Amazon website looks pretty elemental, actually. But when you look at the overall end-to-end CX experience, that's where there's a differentiation. So for that sort of middle tier retailers that have the ability to actually deliver on the promise, available to promise, and all these other pieces, there is an option out there, right? And I think we're seeing Shopify as an example do really well because of this sort of middle tier retailers.
So I'm glad that you brought this up, Chad, because Amazon just released something called Buy with Prime. And so for everyone that was on Shopify, and that part is where they were stuck at. They're like, okay, we don't want to lose our customer data to Amazon. We want to keep our customer data, but we don't want to deal with the logistics. So Amazon said, okay, we have a perfect solution for you. It's Buy with Prime. You just you send all of your stuff to us. We'll fulfill it through Amazon. And then when people buy, you'll get that badge. You're buying with Prime. So it'll ship from our facility and you keep all of the customer data. And so they're leaving nothing for anyone. Yeah. So if you're unhappy with losing the customer data, fine. You drive the traffic, you get the customer, and we'll do the shipping. It's still, they're still adding revenue to their bottom line.
Absolutely. Mina, so I think Amazon is doing all the right things to kind of keep the customers on Amazon. And when I keep the customers, for them, the customers are retailers of the world also. I'm saying Amazon as a whole. There are not many retailers that you will find on AWS. Most of the retailers try and go any other platform in AWS from just because the customer data standpoint, okay? But having said that, I think both Chai and Mina, you made a good point. And I think I'll open the floor again for one small thing, the overall consumer experience. So I'm talking about two things which Mina brought up, and Matthew, I think that may be close to your heart also, is about the hyper-personalization. And that is true for, I think, everybody. Michelle, you've been part of retail for quite a long time. Now you're part of manufacturing. And you are also looking at the interface between retail and manufacturing. So the personalization, or now what they call as hyper-personalization, how do you see your organization catering to that, talking about 360-degree view of a customer and so on and so forth? Is there some, Matthew, I will start with you. Do you see anything happening in your organization on those things? Definitely will be happening, but to what extent, I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're working on these things, and I think when I think of Amazon, I think of how these customer experiences are manifesting in their end-to-end fulfillment. But I think the real way to differentiate is with how they gather and use data for just about everything they do. And I think that is really the gap between them and a lot of companies that are trying to go through this digital transformation and adapt to this growing demand online. One of the biggest challenges we face internally is how do we not only get customer data, but aggregate that data, store that data, standardize that data, and then build the pipelines to get that everywhere we need it across our platform. The system that we're working on building is predicated on that. It's essentially understanding what we know about the customer, understanding what activities they're interested in, where they're located, if they're members or not members, and then having a way to pair that with the experiences that potentially are relevant for them. And so I think the core piece of that we're really focused on is building a consistent taxonomy across our different lines of business, that we can add to our content, we can add to our product information, and we can begin pairing it with the customer data. And that is, for us, the foundation of personalization, being able to make that pairing and then have, again, those business rules, those algorithms start picking up the content and delivering it to the right customer based on that consistent metadata and customer data.
Yeah. Amil, anything from you before I actually give one more idea? Okay, Michelle, I think Michelle, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. I'd like to ask everybody in the group, how are we asking customers what they like, what they don't like, what they need, what we're missing? Because I hear some solutions out there, but one thing that I did when I was at Best Buy and I was doing business development, we were constantly asking the customer, what do they like so that we can meet their needs? And so there's a lot of stuff out here. Again, different. You take a look at a trend curve, you take a look at an overall shopping process in one's mind. It's different for buying a couch versus dog food versus a tent. And so where are we getting information from the customer? Matthew and Karen, you know, how are we, and especially with Amazon, how are we getting the information from the customers as to what they want and what they need so that we can meet those needs? That's one thing we haven't talked about yet in this journey.
Karen, you're on mute.
Karen, mute.
There we go. Michelle, I think that's a really important point, because what happens is that it's everyone's good idea about what the customer wants versus what's the customer's actual experience. And I know one of the things that I've been involved in with a couple of companies is doing not just focus groups, but going beyond focus groups, actually doing one-on-one interviews with people, both on social, on phone, but also in person. And actually some of it's just really there live at the store. One of the big main retailers, the Gap Group, I did a lot of work with Banana Republic and the Gap, where we would actually go to the physical store, and as people left the store, ask to talk to them and say, do you use online? You're here at the store. What's the balance? Why are you here? There's nothing replaces that one-on-one conversation. It's just how it is. You know, whether you can look at the psychology of body language, whatever, when you're physically there with people. So I know a lot of my clients are like, oh, we don't want to talk to anybody in person anymore. We don't want to do any more physical. But I'm like, no. You can't just do it online. You can't just go, here's a survey online. You really have to physically stand there and talk to people, because what you find out is different. And then there's an interaction that happens that's very rich. And so I think your point is extremely well taken. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, please.
Again, when you listen to the customer, we did a lot of similar things when we were doing new business development at Best Buy. We would bring shoppers in our mock, watch them, engage with the signage. Are they reading the details to make that purchase of buying this widget? What information do they need? We did the same thing when we were building our online sites. We thought it was easy to get to a click here, and they couldn't see it. It's like, why can't you see it? It's right there. What do they need? And I think both in-store as well as online, I think customers, if they are in their journey of, again, it's different if it's an item that they already know what it is, or if they want to discover something, they want something new and exciting, but they don't know. Both those journeys are different. The information they need is different. How we have to engage with them both in-store and online are different. And so you almost have to compartmentalize those and then build towards that, back to the infrastructure, which is talked about, but also the content, and then how you bring it to life to make it exciting, especially if it's new items.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because, when I was doing those in-store interviews for Banana Republic and the Gap, you'd be shocked how many people, when I said, why are you in the store today when you could buy this online, said to me, I just needed to get out of the house and relax. I work from home and I just needed to get out of the house and do something different. That was the most common response that I heard. And there's no online shopping that replaces that.
If I may offer just one quick aspect to this as well, beyond what the customers tell you, it's also what they actually want versus what they tell you. Oftentimes, organic is a good example. Offering organic is sort of critical for grocery retail, obviously. But when you look at the sales, it just doesn't make sense. But we have to carry organic simply because people want the option of having that. The McDonald's story of as soon as they put salad up on the menu, their fry sales went up, some crazy percentage. I was probably one of those people. But the idea is that people don't often tell you. They will act in ways that you have to infer some of that. And I think going back to some of your point around technologies, there's much better technology today that can help us decipher that and sort of infer some of those things. There's the example that Malcolm Gladwell, the author of many books, obviously, but Tipping Point being one of them. I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about this idea of the perfect spaghetti sauce, right? And trying to find the perfect spaghetti sauce. And in consumer research and everything, they found that there were all these different flavors that people wanted. They couldn't make sense of the data. It was not until that they stepped back and they thought, okay, consumers aren't going to tell us exactly what they want. It's going to be through experience that we're going to be able to decipher that. And then they were able to come up with a marketing strategy around multiple spaghetti sauces, as an example. So to go back to your point, Michelle, there's no one perfect spaghetti sauce. It's sort of talking to the customer, doing the good old, paper and pen, but as well as taking and leveraging technology to be able to decipher that.
Absolutely, Chai. Chai, one more thing, which probably I think the second component and apart from the data, collection of data and storing of data. So I know there are a lot of platforms available for data collection and storing data, big data, and you can talk about Snowflake, all the cloud platforms that you talk about. I want to understand the third component of data, which is how many companies have created models to consume the data in the right way. So in the sense, like there is a lot of data that's there with us. How many people are actually using algorithms or created models or using data analytics or data sciences to reach out to the right customers with right personalized campaign or a promotion and go those things. So that's the other piece that I think I want to understand. And again, I think, Michael, I'll start from you this time because you've been a lot of experience in Best Buy. Matthew, if you can go for some, it's up to you, basically.
Matthew, you may be, because I do a lot from buying and merchandising and strategic marketing, et cetera, within Best Buy and buying, a little bit less on the expertise of the IT side of the structural data. So Matthew, you may want to take this one, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to be clear, you're asking what is out there, what solutions are out there for kind of solving these challenges?
So I'm asking more about are we using these? I think the data. It's not the technology, but it's more about the data sciences to use it for personalized campaign, personalized I would say promotions for the customers out there. That's what I'm saying. I think that's one of the key component of the consumer experience as well.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it depends on the company to a great extent. And I think at REI, we are one of those companies that are in the midst of that transformation to kind of balancing our digital and our physical stores and creating that increasingly seamless experience. And so we are doing all of the right things, but again, one of our biggest challenges continues to be all of those things that you said, like how do we get the right customer information? How do we get consistently? I think we're trying to figure out what's a value proposition for our customers that delivers value, but also allows us to better understand them. And that ideally encourages them to log in, because when you have somebody logged into your site, you're able to better understand them in a way that you really can't when they're not logged in, when you just have cookies or whatever technology that you're using. And so I think when I think of that question, I just think of the myriad challenges that we need to address, and I think the level of maturity basically starts with, one, are you gathering that data, and how are you storing that data? Two, like how well are you able to standardize that data and make it consistent so that it's comparable across customers, it's comparable across offers, and then how much are you building that data pipeline to make sure that that data is getting from whatever relates to repositories into the systems that are consuming it and using it to make decisions about the customer experiences that you're ultimately showing on the front end. And so we're in this process where we're essentially working through all of those different phases. And I think it really is almost a reflection in my mind of the maturity of a company from kind of a data transformation standpoint, how well they can utilize the data to drive decision making and ultimately deliver customer experiences.
So on the same note,
just before we move on, Samir, I would say that Raymond is actually going to be talking quite a bit, and so I'm not asking necessarily for Raymond to steal his own thunder, but I would love his perspective just as he unmutes and gets to provide his perspective. Though I will offer that these challenges that Matthew said are real, right, and they can have some real world consequences. The story of Target, doing data personalization and all of that, and offering personalized offers and things like that is a good one, where they target a particular family with some offers around some products that then eventually father was able to tell that their daughter was actually pregnant, teenage daughter was actually pregnant, and the sort of the implications, social implications of how much power actually everyone has is really important. So having the right mechanisms in place that Raymond will talk about are critical. Otherwise, it can really hurt.
Yeah, if I could just jump in. Sorry, I'm working with a large jeweler, and their concern with hyper personalization is if somebody goes to the store and buys something for their mistress, and then a recommendation comes to go along with that. So we call it the good Eve and the bad Steve. So we're trying to be very careful, about that kind of situation. So kind of similar to about art.
Got it. Thank you, Raymond. I think Karen, I had a question for Karen, but I think she'll come back. Karen, you're back. So, Karen, one point that I had was from a marketing and a social marketing standpoint. How do we make sure that we are not making mistakes, the retailers are not making mistakes in reaching out to the end consumers out there? So I'm just trying from are there any kind of top 3 mistakes that most organizations make doing social marketing and all those things?
Yeah, I think, and this is pretty much across industry, whether you're, a retailer doing clothing, whether you're a retailer doing computers. And I think one of the big mistakes I've seen is, again, violating this 80-20 rule, making way too much of a focus of the social on just promotion and product after product. So way too much promotion. I think that's one major mistake that retailers are making socially, is they're just making all it about themselves instead of about what the consumer is interested in. I think the second mistake they make, shockingly, is a lot of them still aren't using video. And, if you look at the research, about 93% of retailers tell us that they're getting customers from using video well on social. So a lot of them still haven't gotten on board with the video piece of social. I think that's a huge, one of the biggest mistakes that retailers are making now on social. And I think the third mistake that retailers are making is again, I said this earlier, is they really aren't giving consistent brand messages. A lot of them are kind of just all over the place, rather than having what their core messaging is, what their core content is, and then creating a content calendar that stays very consistent with that. And, in my world, in the consulting work that I do, I created something called the concentric circles of content, because the content shouldn't just be what's core to your business, It's not just about what you exactly do. It's the things that are tangential and related to that are also important. And of course, you factor into that, and this would be a whole workshop just on itself, but then you factor into that consumers really want to see where companies stand on current social issues. And so a lot of companies are failing to integrate that into their social and messaging. I think those are three just kind of really obvious mistakes that retailers are making in social market.
So, Karen, I'll flip the questions. Are there any three, I would say, success or the right things or the success thing that that the retailers will do or can do in the market?
Sure, it's exactly the opposite. It's one, use video consistently, not only video, but really learn how to integrate effective video into your social marketing. Second thing is stick to that 80-20 rule. Only have 20% of your posts be about promoting your company and your business. Have the other 80% be about things that are helpful and useful, right? And then the third thing is you have to figure out in your company what your comfort level is going to be with commenting on social issues, and then decide how that's going to integrate into your social media marketing and have a plan for it. And there is no right answer. It's like the spaghetti sauce thing. There isn't one right answer. I can tell you during, for example, Black Lives Matter, I had conversations with every single client would call me and go, what do we do? What do we put on our social? And I said, there is no right answer. I had to talk through every client with how they felt, why they were doing it, what their messaging was, and it was different for every client. But you are at a lot. If you do nothing, you put yourself in peril. You have to really think that strategy. So those are kind of the three things that I advise clients to do and work with clients on, because I think those are three really important things. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're selling toasters or tents or technology. You have to think through those three issues.
Thank you, Karen. I'll switch one. I'll switch a gear. Again, I'll pick up what Chai mentioned again on the consumer experience side. I see some questions that people have been asking on the Q&A side, and those are pertaining to, I would say, which is the biggest component, which is the logistics or how do you receive product, the delivery. I think that's the third component, which actually adds to your consumer experience. So I think with the recent, I would say, supply chain challenges that we have seen across industry, I'll give you a typical example. I think one thing which has happened is the brand loyalty has taken a big hit. I'll give you an example for that. There was a shortage of the milk product for the kids or the babies, I would say, and then it was not pertaining for the loyalty of the brand or something. It was for the parents to get whatever they could get in the market and pick it up and for the kids. So I gave a very, very extreme example, but I think with the supply chain shortage that we are seeing, I believe it's all. Another example was the toilet roll. I think there was no matter if I'm using Charmin versus Southern roll. It's like people used to go to the retail store, pick up whatever toilet paper was available, and then used to bring it to the home. So I think those are two things. I think one of the questions that I think I'll just read the questions. Retailers are facing issues of stocks, unavailability, and delay in delivering products due to disruptions in fulfillment centers, unorganized last mile delivery, and ability to predict demand. How retail companies are leveraging technologies to address this?
I have one example I can give that I think is relevant to the distribution challenges. And I think it's almost like anybody who invests. I think the goal for us is to diversify the way that we can get our products to our vendors. And so obviously have our own distribution where we have vendors send us products, we store them, we ship them. But we've also been building vendor inventory fulfillment technology where we have a broader catalog of products available online we actually have in our distribution centers. And so if customers are selecting, to go back to the example of a Brooks running shoe, we might not have every type and every size of Brooks running shoe available, but we can offer all of those because we have a working relationship with Brooks where we can take the order, and essentially it's similar to that ship with Prime idea. We can take the order and then work with Brooks to have them ship from their fulfillment center if it's not something that we have available. And so that's just one example, but I think that the idea there is to get your eggs out of one basket and diversify as much as possible so that you can kind of mitigate any of these specific challenges with a given distribution center or a given product.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you, Matthew. And I think Yeah, go
Just
ahead,
a
please.
quick one
I
on.
was coming to that.
Yeah, I just add on a quick what Matthew mentioned. One of the reasons I talked about really is the proliferation of choice led to a lot of complexity in retail operations, right? And simplifying that is helping not only the businesses but also the consumers. So we have seen a few of our businesses where we cut down on the options significantly, and the business grew at a pace which was not expected, and in a very good way. And that is something which is helping declutter the shelf space, help you communicate your story better, and get the consumer back to your brand, and kind of support that brand loyalty piece which you just mentioned, Samir.
Thank you. Also, I think one of the term that we have been using right now, it's a business term. It's more about the connected enterprise. I think connected
Mm-hmm.
enterprise is more about providing the seamless experience of customer experience through your mobile device, your e-commerce, your store, as well as your backend channels in terms of your supply chain and the inventory visibility and all those things. So I think that's another concept that we are seeing much in the market, which is helping a little bit. I'm just saying if there's a physical stock, you cannot do anything, but at least what Meena was talking a little bit like available to promise, basically. That's one key component. If you have visibility to the end of the supply chain, I think you will be able to kind of get the customer
Yeah,
with you all the time, even if you are promising it that you will be getting product 1 week from now or maybe 2 weeks
absolutely.
from now. But I think that's very, very important concept that I would say.
Absolutely.
Also, one more thing which I think Chai mentioned a little bit, and we discussed a little bit back, a little while back. Anand, you also brought up the point that the idea that we can procure a few like dresses to try it out and return all those things. So, the important concept that is coming is environment sustainability out there, and it's pertaining to multiple other factors apart from only the returns and buying the multiple products out there. I just wanted to check with the team out there. And are we facing anything which is, are we doing specifically something to take care of the environment right now or take care of that particular corporate, I would say, governance kind of stuff? Um, Karen, I'll start with you from a marketing or social standpoint. Have you seen something in the market from the retailer standpoint? Karen, you're on
Oh,
mute again. Sorry. No, it's okay.
can you ask the question again? Sorry.
No, I was saying the environment sustainability. Have you
Oh,
seen
yes.
anything from overall marketing and uh, I think the corporate social responsibility standpoint, and from a social media standpoint that you have seen in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's a continuum. Some companies are really way ahead on this, and some companies are really far behind, and some companies are just in the middle. There's no one, place that companies are at. But one of the things that I'm seeing is that almost every branding strategy offsite that I've been facilitating, one of the conversations that's coming up is how do we take into consideration as we're planning our social and we're planning our marketing, how do we take into consideration the sustainability aspect? Because I think what that's being driven by, quite frankly, isn't necessarily on most companies' parts. It's not being driven by the altruism of the company. It's being driven by the demand of the consumer, particularly, younger generations, to have that be part of it. And I think companies are realizing that if they don't meet that demand, that younger generation, it's going to hurt them in the marketplace. And so what I'm seeing is I'm seeing companies recognizing that depending on the demographic they're selling to, they really have to fold that into the core messaging. What's interesting to me though is that very few are integrating that into their social, right? And again, that'd be part of the 80, not the 20%. That 80% would be here's the social piece, and very few are doing that. And I don't think it's because they don't want to. I think it's because they're in this track of doing things a certain way, and they haven't quite gotten their heads culturally wrapped around yet that you have to integrate that in.
True, right. And since you mentioned one, Michelle, we're saying something. Right.
I was going to say, I think it's, coming from the manufacturer side now, that's something I'm pushing our company to as well, to put it in social media, because to be sustainable has that's a very broad term. It can be sustainable on how you're making the product, i.e. our manufacturer, since it's in Europe, is buying locally and selling globally. It's how much post-consumer material we're using, recyclable material using in the products. It's how and what we're doing for packaging. It's, there's so many different elements of sustainability. I think the customer hears the word sustainable, but they don't know what it is. I think there needs to be more definition and more information. And I think this is something that can easily be done. It should be done in store. There should be some visuals for if you are doing an in-store experience, if you're a customer shopping in store, as well as online. But it's really nice online because that's a platform that you can give a couple keywords, sustainable here and how. But if you want more information, click here and I'll give you the full report. All the information you want to read can be done digitally. Well, some people are really into it and want to read it. Other people, the consumer, they're still trying to understand how it works for them. So this is where I think the digital world can really help us explain to customers where they're at in the cycle of how much sustainability information they need to know. So this is a great topic to discuss, to be able to show that this is multi-level on that journey again. So I'm really pushing our company to do that. Again, social media, click, give the big highlights, headlines, and then here's how you go a deeper dive on our own personal website, and we will explain everything about a company to you.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Michelle and Karen, you brought 2 points actually. And you talk about the various demographics of people or retail stores, from millennials to Gen Zs that we are talking about. And everybody has a different way of buying stuff. So as per a survey that was done around maybe around 7 to 8 months back, there was a survey saying that Gen Z will be not be going to the stores, and they will be doing shopping more online. They will be exploring other like newer kinds of like doing shopping, maybe AR, VR, extended reality, metaverse. I'm just giving examples of that. A recent study that was done, Gen Z still went to the stores, by the way. I'm just saying, I think the old survey did not hold good, actually, but they still went to the stores. To be very honest with you, there were 10% of the Gen Zs that went to the physical stores. Having said that, I think I just wanted to bring one more point, and this relates to, Michelle, your point, in terms of the environment sustainability. I think there are some technologies available in the market, and I'll probably come to Harvinder a little bit while. Like, for example, metaverse, blockchain, NFTs. I think those are picking up, but it has a flip side of the environment sustainability also. So I think, Harvinder, if you can talk us a little bit about what are the things that are seeing the market from a new technology standpoint pertaining to retail, and then we can have a small discussion around that as well.
Sure, sir. So I think again, just a little bit before ESG, we just talked about it. I think when I'm interacting with some of the customers, so it reminds me to I think specific instances where I was meeting a prospect, and just for a safer side, I carried a printed version of my presentation, and the prospect reflected very negatively on that part. They are completely to sustainability. They're saying, hey, it's a crime in our company to have a printout because, as Michelle, you said, they are completely bought into a digital world that way. Right. But at the same time, there's another company that's committed for 2040 net zero. They don't know what all needs to be involved to achieve that part. But again, as a corporate, they have committed on that part. And many things which they are doing it right now, they are keeping into a closed their employees in more immersive manner. We were doing a proof of concepts where in New York City, for example, one in Dallas and one in California. And when we were doing a test on that part where people can touch each other's hand in a virtual world, or there is a vibration happens when you do a high five in this metaverse, basically. I think the way the whole things are coming along together, there are a lot of building blocks involved. We talk about blockchain, we talk about NFTs. I think it's a lot of things that are happening behind the scene to keep things intact in terms of understanding what is sustainable and what is not. And many cases when millennials or even Gen Z or again Gen Alpha are coming into this part, they are very aware. Like if you see some statistics, think the buying pattern is changing in terms of NFTs, which are more sustainable than otherwise, and that's what it's picking it up. So as a whole, the way I see that part, I think awareness is there. Definitely, it's a long way to achieve that part. But a lot of corporations are making a good progress towards that, Samir.
Thank you. I'll give you an example. My personal example, actually. My daughter is into art, and I asked her one question as to why are you not uh, investing in NFTs, in the sense like you're making, and you know what she told me, and she's just 19 years old. So she told me there is a lot of negative impact on the environment by using NFTs. That's why she is not using it. I'm just saying there are a lot of things that I also learned for small anecdotes like this. I think that's when I did more research on what is a better way of kind of mining NFT and all those things. But I'm just saying those are the, like you mentioned, Gen Alpha and Gen Zs and all those things. I think those are some of the people who are taking care of those small aspects on the environment sustainability and bringing up those ideas out there.
I will say, Samir, though, that when you think about anything new, right, it's in a context that is sort of within the old in the beginning, right? So it's how we do things today, right? And so when Amazon came up, it was sort of like laughed at, right? And so when you think about some of the new technologies, yes, it's laughable at the moment, but the time hasn't come for that particular. That doesn't mean that every technology out there is going to, kind of succeed. Obviously, there are a slew of inventions never really made it. And so, but I will say, when it comes to mining, for example, for Bitcoins and things like that, all of this processing power, it's really the processing power and the energy it takes to be able to mine these things are what the core issue is. I'm seeing startups that are starting sustainable sort of data centers that are based completely on wind and on solar, right? Absolutely. And so these millennials that we talk about, or the Gen Zs that we talk about, they're the innovators. They're actually innovating ways of actually making the entire system be more sustainable. So I think there's this idea that yes, this is what consumer believes, but they're also often becoming part of the solution as well.
Absolutely, you're absolutely. And the reason why I said that there are much better ways to mine those things than what were the traditional ways of NFTs and all those things. Having said that, Matthew, I just have one data point for you. There are a lot of early adopters in the apparel industry, especially the fashion retailers and all, who are exploring the metaverse and the NFTs platform right now. We are working with some of the fashion retailers and the apparel retailers who are adopting metaverse and NFTs in a very big way. So just a data point, actually, I just wanted to share it with you. Apart from that, I think what I also wanted to, I know this group is not about technology, it is more about the trends and what is happening on the business side. But I think the other thing which I want to talk about was on the supply chain side, in terms of the physical inventory optimization, the transportation, the last mile. The last mile is one thing which I believe is very critical component, and there are a lot of retailers who have invested heavily on the last mile. For example, I'll give you one specialty retailer which is the office supply retailers. They have invested with Instacart, for example, because they wanted to deliver the same day. Basically, if I'm putting an order on that retail store, the only way that they have their own fleet. So the only way they could deliver it either through Uber or through Lyft, or they tried it with Instacart because they could deliver that. So that's another scenario that I'm seeing the retailers where they are strengthening the last mile connectivity. So last mile delivery, I would say. Coming from a big low block retailing background, do you see anything like that from a low block standpoint as well?
Oh, 100%. In fact, I'm going to talk about it, so to steal my own thunder.
Oh, sorry. Then you
for later. No. It's actually a perfect segue, probably into what we're going to talk about in a minute. Okay. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work actually being done on the last mile. That's no secret that's something that we all need to sort of grapple with, doing it in a sustainable and economically effective way as well, right? And so we are exploring different things, and of course, we just recently announced a partnership with DoorDash, actually.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It's a really great one to actually do the last mile delivery that we just spoke about. So there's different things that different retailers are trying out to be able to grapple with that, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I have one more question, which is there on the Q&A. I
Yeah.
think Lionel is on the call. So this is pertaining to the Omni world. So the question is how to overcome multiple conflicts in channels of distribution in this digital world. So that's one thing. Anand, I think you actually, when we were discussing in the past, you also mentioned us related questions, not in terms of the distribution, but how do we influence the customer priorities, which are available to him through multiple channels and all. So I'm just trying to figure out if that's somebody can answer this question for this particular. Yeah, Michelle, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is actually a very important topic to discuss because there's multiple conflicts in channel distribution. There's conflicts of product content, of images, and pricing. So on the manufacturing side, I dealt with this both as a retailer, which I'm sure Matthew does as well as a manufacturer. And all of a sudden, my product is on Amazon, and I'm selling it into Amazon, but then now I'm also selling into Ace Hardware and Camping World, but then there's also Ace Hardware stores picking them up themselves and putting it on their own site. It's very, very, very challenging. I can Google my brand and my line and see multiple images, some of them right, some of them wrong. I should be able to control that. But in today's world, I can't without trying to figure out who that seller is out there posting inaccurate, whether it's information of the size, the picture, the size, and the content. And then also you have the whole pricing that goes with it as to I'm selling, and some of these people I don't even know are now cutting my price where it's hurting retailers in general. This is a very, very large topic, and it's something that retailers and manufacturers have to work together side by side, and we have to continue. And then also even working with Amazons, because this is something where we have to come up with some kind of standards, if possible, to make sure that content be correct and that manufacturer can actually almost own that content and get it corrected when it's not. It's a very, very, very big topic and challenge for this omni-channel business.
And I'll just add on to what Michelle mentioned, like beyond the channels within a country, with the way global trade is, it's a challenge across the globe as well. Like we are seeing our products which we sell only in the US showing up in Pakistan, and then people start to feel that is it spurious, and that starts to impact your image, your brand story, and everything else. So it's as Michelle mentioned, it's a massive topic in itself.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Probably we'll have a separate discussion on this topic at some point in time. But I know Naveen is there and Nitin is there on the call, but I just want to kind of leave at one last question, and probably I'll get your brainstorming. What next? And when I say what are the next foreseeable challenges that we see from a retail standpoint? Again, that's the last question. I don't think I'll be having more, but I'll start with Anand.
Yeah.
If you can go, please.
Sure. So I think one thing is clearly, this links back to the ESG piece which we talked about, environment, and linking that to transparency and authenticity of data which is available. That is going to be a big factor at what we are seeing in the next few years. And a lot of technology like blockchain and all play a very important role, in enabling that and making sure that we have the right details available at the right time to the right people.
Yeah. Matthew, from your standpoint, especially on the
Yeah, it's interesting. I think scaling a lot of these new technologies and these new experiences is going to be an ongoing challenge. I think it's different from every retailer, and I kind of have a different perspective on what's next. In that, I think my goal from the building a platform is to build it in a way that we can be as nimble as possible, that we have interchangeable technologies, and that we can respond to whatever change is coming, because I think we can all prognosticate and have a sense of some of the things that are coming, but there are also going to be a lot of surprises out there. And I think the impetus is on the people that are building a lot of the foundations within these tech companies and retail companies to build them in a way that they're adaptable as possible. And that in and of itself, another huge topic and another, I think, challenge for a lot of us.
Thank you. Michelle, anything from your side, please?
Yeah, I really think what's next is, we've got a lot of new platforms and technologies, et cetera, to be able to play with. I think what's very, very critical is that the manufacturer and the retailers have to work together.
Sure.
Because we're both both tripping over our own 2 feet, doing similar tasks. We have to drive efficiencies that I, as the manufacturer, can come to the retailer with all of the, say if I'm selling tents, this is the content a consumer should need. I should be asking the consumer what they need. I should be feeding it to Matthew so they're not guessing, so that I'm the expert. And I want Matthew, the retailer, to be the expert of how they then get it out. But we need consistency. I think the manufacturer and retail, it's more important than ever that we're sitting down and having these conversations and having those structural architectural conversations up front before we just all go do the tasks. And I feel we're all doing a lot of tasks right now without the structure up front.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Karen, anything from your side, please?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what a lot of people said, but I think it's taking some of the more abstract social experiences in the store, like and using technology, the accurate replication of online. I think that's going to be a game changer when that happens. I think that's really the big next thing, is being able to get a more accurate color palette online.
Right. Okay. Chuck, I know you have a session after this, but don't want to steal your thunder. Any last thoughts on what's going to come?
Yeah, actually, what's going to come next is the concept of the industrial dilemma, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. But the idea of everything what we just talked about, really, how do we grasp this changing world, this ever-changing world, which, by the way, the pace of change is changing, right? And so this is an exponential growth phase that we're facing. And so how do we grapple with it? I'm going to offer some insights around that. But I think it's not so much the technology, it's the change of the technology that's going to really impact pretty much everyone, especially.
I get your point, and I think I'll just add one data point. The innovation that has been done in 8 months equals to 10 years of innovation that was supposed to happen in 10 years time. So it has happened in, let's say, those few months of there. The last point, anything that you can add to what we're going to see?
Sure. So as we're talking to our retail customers, I think we're still figuring it out. How do you interpret the data which you have already collected? And what's the actionable outcome so that you can utilize that? I think the next thing which probably worrying people is the next generation de-fragmentation. If you look at, again, your kids are in a very different platform, and the data does not consolidate. They are in Message, WhatsApp, Instagram, and these buying patterns will be very, very different. So what I am hearing out more from the customer, how do you get that 360 view which we're talking has already been challenged. Now it's going to be a next level of a complexity coming in and then figuring those things out. So this is what I think is our things to handle or address going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for your time. I know we actually have more questions that we may probably have the session up there, but really appreciate your time, guys. And thank you very much. Over to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, guys. It was very engaging another session, guys. To tell you frankly, this 1 hour was not enough for this. We require more time, at least 1 more hour. But time is a constraint. But we have great sessions coming up in the next 2 months as well, covering a lot of aspects of retail. So request you guys to join the sessions as well. I know it will be all engaging. Thanks, Samir, for moderating this panel discussion. It was very lovely. Thanks, Harvinder, to be part of this. Thanks, Meena, Anant, Michelle, Karen, Matthew, Raymond, all coming together to make this panel discussion a great success. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Chai, you can stay with us. So we have next speaker, Chaitanya Bhatt. We call him Chai. So he will give his view on that. He's Director of Strategy and Innovation at Low Block Companies Limited. It's one of the largest retail in Canada. His topic is the industrialist dilemma, lessons from an innovator in a large corporation. So over to you, Jay. You are on mute, Jay.
Yeah. Perfect. There we go. Thank you so much for having me and for joining us today. This is a great, lively discussion, and I wish I could actually give back some of my time to continue that discussion. But anytime any of the team members that were on the panel discussion have a perspective, please do feel free to hop in and make a comment. I'm sort of going to take a lot of what we talked about and sort of pull it all together in a minute. But before I do that, we talked a lot about customers and sort of understanding the customer. I mean, when it comes to the audience, I'd like to know a little bit more of who you are, actually, before I even introduce myself. So I would love to know what your professional background is, because this tool didn't necessarily allow too many different types of polls, if we kept it simple for this purpose. But please share in the poll section. So on the right-hand side of your display, you'll see polls and a question in the poll that will come up. So what is your professional background? Do you work in the retail organization? Do you have work for a startup or some sort of a solution provider? Or do you work for a consulting firm or systems integrator of some sort? Or you're just curious to be here. So if you can answer in the poll section, that'd be great. I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to find the poll section. I know the first poll is always sort of difficult because it's hard for you to find that. I know that some people have already chimed in, so that's great.
So just let all of you know, the poll is on the right side. You can say there's a partners discuss Q&A panelist polls. Under the polls, you will see the option.
Great, thank you.
I work for a retail organization, and all those options will be there. So you have to select one option which suits you. And next polls, which we'll be having, it'll be easy for you then.
Yeah, exactly. And it is going to be heavy on polls because I love interaction and just so that I can get a better perspective of who you guys are all about. All right, so it looks like a lot of you actually come from a retail organization, which is great. And some of you are curious, obviously, and some of you have a sort of are a systems provider or work for a startup. So this is a great mix of both. And so I'll talk a lot about things that are going to be obviously relevant for all of you. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the Q&A as well. And so I'm Chai, as I mentioned. There's a bit of story around my name, but I always say that at Starbucks, I confuse people when I order my coffee and I say my name is Chai. Oftentimes confused about what they're making versus not. And I work for Loblaw Companies Limited, which is the largest retailer in Canada, second only in terms of employment to the federal government. And so very large retailer, 2,400 locations across Canada, and really engaged. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the Loblaw experience in retail sort of maps up. And I'm also an EMBA candidate from the DeGroote School of Business as well, and I'll be finishing that later on this year as well. I'm a retail enthusiast. I'm a practicing innovator, have the scars to prove it, a lifelong learner, and just love to daydream. And being immersed in retail technology pretty much all my career, I've worked with all the three-letter acronyms across the board, right from ERPs all the way through to AGVs. So anything really to do with retail technology, I'm more than comfortable to speak about. So I think we've already talked about it. You got here, so I don't really need to belabor the point. But retail's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, both physical and digital. And we talked a lot about that. But to quote Mark Twain, the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. And so I think it's important to not discount especially the physical aspect of retail, given the employment of a lot of economies actually are dependent on retail, and so we need to really look at this and think about what then matters for us. So another poll, have be read those polls. There's going to be quite a few of those. When was the last purchase you made? Okay, and so like if you were purchasing something while listening to panel discussion or my talk, maybe that tells you something. But or if it was yesterday, and yes, 12 midnight counts. And if it was a week ago, and if you say that, probably someone else is shopping for you, either your partner or someone that you live with probably does all the shopping. But if you can go ahead and vote for that, that'd be great. We have a lot of shopaholics. We have an even amount of yesterday and today. Okay, great. Okay, so most of the audience, as you know, is quite self-evident, has made a retail purchase either yesterday or today. And this is, again, to the point that we made, which was retail matters. And we need to really look at retail and how does that impact our daily lives, and how does that impact our economy, especially in this day and age. So, retail matters, and then the industrialist dilemma. So, this presentation is about the retail industrialist dilemma. So let me talk about the industrialist dilemma. Robert Siegel, who actually teaches at Stanford Business School, sort of coined this phrase with Aaron Levy, who is actually part of a co-founder of Box Inc. And they talked about the industrialist dilemma as basically systems of management and assets, systems management and assets led to sort of success in the industrial age. Henry Ford as being an example of that, the Ford Motor Company and the entire machine, quote unquote, that he had set up was really around being efficient, being able to deliver mass scale, are things that really made those organizations successful. And this was around the time when Loblaw actually was born. It was born out of that sort of 1900 era where Loblaw Groceritera was formulated. Having said that, however, unlike a lot of the industrialists that you might have seen, where they found it difficult to sort of navigate this new world of the digital age, Loblaw has been able to reinvent on a regular basis. And I'll talk about a few examples, a couple examples right now, and a few a little bit later on. Loblaw was one of the first retailers to actually provide a walk-in and shop yourself type of experience. So before the 1920s, you would actually walk up to a storefront and you would hand them a sheet. The sheet would have all the things that you wanted, and the gentleman or the lady would go in the back, would grab the products and bring them out to you, bag them for you, and hand it over to you. Sort of sounds familiar, sort of like the model maybe, for physical sheet. It's sort of online, I guess. But that was that's how you used to shop. And then there was an innovation around, hey, why don't we let the customers actually explore? And there's a huge proliferation of products, and everything that we see today, around the store is really, it goes back to those early days. And then in the mid 50s, air conditioning and sort of big box stores. That was something that was new at the time, and Loblaw was right in sort of the forefront of it. So these are some of the examples, again, of sort of innovation that occurred, again, though, within that industrialist age, right? This idea that you had mass scale, you were able to actually build a massive machine that was able to create products and be able to sell products. So that was a Henry Ford era, as it were. And obviously, we know that that's changed quite a bit. And you look at the Ford Motor Company, and I love using stories and analogies. So, going from Henry Ford to Elon Musk, right, from the Iron Age to the Iron Man, as it were, it's a different age. What you will about Elon Musk, he represents this sort of digital age and completely different way of sort of being managed by large organizations as well. And so the realities of the digital age are very different. And so walk into a retailer, for those of you that are consultants or have consulted, you'd walk in and say, okay, here's the retail store tech market map, right? And Samir, I was smiling when we were talking in the panel discussion about, hey, what are some of the technologies that are out there? There's a lot of technologies. You walk in and with an eye chart like this, and you can implement pretty much anything that's on there. And Do you think that by implementing any subset of these, you'll be successful? That's not necessarily the case. And so what is it about the digital age that really drives change? Is really the next question that we need to answer. And how will it make retailers continue to be relevant? And so next question for you, related to that purchase that you made either yesterday or today. Some of you, earlier than that. The next poll is, the last purchase that you made, was it an online purchase or in store? And I made a little bit of a nuance: online delivered home, online I picked up the store, and you actually went in the store to buy that product. I'll wait for a couple of minutes. Great, the answers are piling in now. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like a clear sort of line that the audience is certainly drawn around the fact that half of the purchases, or half the people in the poll, I should say, said that they actually bought online and delivered home. And this is the Amazon effect that we talked about, right? The ability to be able to click something and have something be delivered to you within whatever number of period of time is amazing, right? And yet there is somewhere between sort of 45 to 50%, depending on some people that might not have voted, went in store or had to go in store to actually pick up the product. So it's a 50-50 essentially. And so this is what we're seeing in the market as well, that while people are shopping online quite a bit, there is still this need to have a physical store in place. And so I don't sort of over-index on stats. So this will be the only other stats side that I will put up there. And this, I actually think that there are a lot of nuances to as well. And so when you look at question number 2, what is each generation's preference to buy from the physical store? What we don't get out of this particular question is the question of what type of products do you prefer to buy? And the preferences of the type of products that Gen Z want to buy, given that the age that they're in, is very different than, say, a millennial or a baby boomer. So there's this. There are 2 factors that are conflating surveys like this. One is around the fact that it's the age as well, and the time and space that they occupy today, versus people that are obviously have mortgage to pay and home to manage and all of these other pieces that maybe millennials and baby boomers need to do. And so it's a different type of experience. And so when people over-index on this, what happens is that they over-index on the digital aspect and forget about the physical. And this is one of the biggest issues that retailers are facing today, that they're not using what Lionel actually talked about, which was brilliant, was around the fact that your store is a piece of media. It's the ability for you to actually connect with your customers and to talk to them, to give them the experiences that they're looking for. And in the last 6 months, there is still 65% of U.S. In the U.S. have actually purchased at a physical store. Obviously, that doesn't add up to 100% because people buy from multiple places. And so it's understanding a little bit underneath these types of surveys that you might see out there. That's important. So then, cutting to the chase, the first principles of retail in the digital age haven't changed much. Like anything that I say here, most of it are things that you probably already know, or are logical things that you would expect a retailer to do. So this point that we have been making in the panel discussions around understanding your customer. And, we always talk about customer matters, right? and the customer desires and what they want and what they aspire to be, all of those things that you need to be part of that. We talk about that, but flip it around and let's talk about it from the perspective of, do you matter to your customers? Right? It's a different question. Does the customer matter to you? Yeah, sure, the customer can matter to you, but do you matter to your customers? Is there something that you provide that no one else can provide? And there's your differentiation. And this is where, a lot of what we talked about earlier around the fact that we need to have a consistent message. Who are you? How do you deliver that consistent message? That's where this comes in. Strengthening supply chain. I mean, obviously, this is a COVID remnant, but I mean, this was true before. And it was just hidden underneath. And there were optimizations that people made, optimizations on how much product they ordered, for example. When I talk about strengthening supply chains, it's also understanding where do you source local versus where do you source further out. And understanding that will help you. And there's, of course, technology that can help with that, but it's really strengthening the supply chain that's critical. You just can't sell what you don't have or can't source. Then embedding sustainability values across the business. I think, one of the quotes from the CEO of Inca, which is the parent company of IKEA, he said sustainability is the new business model, right? And if you look at the investments in ESG, and anyone that has looked at the any sort of investments today, you see that is a huge aspect of how companies are going to be differentiated in the future. How much better is your sustainability goals, and the ability to achieve them in a meaningful way will really set you down. And this particular topic is very different from the industrial age, right? That was all about consumption, right? And this is where it has changed. The earth underneath the retailer's ground has really shifted, and it's being able to be nimble enough to be able to address that is going to be key. And that's where embracing constant change comes in. I was going to say innovation, but I think it's more the idea that embracing that idea of constant change is critical. You can't really exist in this new world without being able to address that change of pace and change of pace inch as well, that we need to be able to grasp as we go forward. Another aspect is, of course, engaging your employees in a way that is meaningful. This is not just about having a couple of sessions with your colleagues and ideation sessions and leaving it at that, or telling the employees they matter and not really putting your money where your mouth is. This is having a great way of being able to engage with your colleagues, empower them to make decisions, and to create an environment where their ideas are actually valued. And so you look at companies like Lego, and they say that we have to create an environment of creativity and innovation. Otherwise, we just won't be able to understand what the customer wants and be able to retain the top talent as well. And so that's a huge aspect. And obviously, the Great Resignation and all these other factors come in. But again, those are symptoms of a much bigger underlying problem, which is this inability of organizations to really engage with their colleagues. And then rethinking our strategy or advantage assets. Again, going back to this industrialist dilemma, the big asset, this continues to be the case in some ways today, is the physical footprint, right? Having number of stores across the nation. What's happened now, though, is that there are new and innovative ways that that footprint can be replicated. And you look at Amazon and their entire business model, they're taking the success of AWS and the cash flows from AWS and reinvesting heavily into buying physical spaces across North America. You look at how much investment they've made in buying up old malls, essentially in sort of spaces that people have either moved out of or malls that just can't sustain themselves. Amazon goes in and buys a slew of them across the U.S., Midwest especially, Why are they doing that? It's because they need that physical footprint to be able to deliver. But they're able to do that in a much easier way than Loblaw was able to, years and years ago, where they had to go in, they had to take the land, develop the actual building, do everything that they needed to do. Whereas Amazon, they're taking over a mall, right? And it becomes much easier for new sort of folks to disrupt the incumbents really in this space. So rethinking our strategic advantages is key, and especially the assets. And this is where data comes in, right? This is where what was in the old day, our strategic asset would have been the physical footprint. Now it's data. Raymond will talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, as that's his expertise. But really understanding what this looks like for our organization is going to be key. So, poll question. I know I did a lot in the last 5 minutes. So I never like to go more than 5 minutes without asking a poll. So, as a customer, right now, really honing into what it is that you think about. What is the one thing that you hate about that in-store experience? Why is it driving you to buy online? What is it about that in-store experience that really you just hate? Is it that you found a product? Is it that you hate waiting in line to check out? Or is it just other people? Some people are just not fan of other people. So whichever one you think is one for you. I certainly see hate waiting in line as already probably up the top, but I think it's sort of across the board for all retailers. But since we have a lot of folks that are from retail, everyone kind of can attest to the fact that waiting in line is the worst. It's interesting because I think about the experience online versus in the physical space, and I want to give you my money. Please take my money. And saying, no, wait, we will take your money when we're ready. And so it's a completely backwards, way to think about it, especially when you think about online and how easy it is just to click and be able to pay very quickly. And so when we think about all of these factors, and looks like it's pretty much sort of 58% as it relates to that piece. A comment on that online and offline before we move on to the next point. Online and offline coexist, as we talked about before, and it's important for each to learn from the other, and they are doing so. Right? And so what I mean by that is experiences that are online learn from the offline experience in ways to ensure that there are good carry forwards into the digital online experience. And I'll give an example. I think Samir was mentioning the smart mirror example, but looking at ways of actually figuring out, when you go into the store today, when you go online, you're able to look at a slew of different dresses and different sizes and things like that really quickly, right? The problem is that you can't actually try it on, right? And trying experience, even if you do have some fancy technology, is sort of crappy at best, frankly. And so you need a store to be able to try that. In store, the stores are becoming smart as well, because they're looking at it and saying, okay, well, able to look at multiple products all at once is great. And consumers also want to try them on. So when you're trying on clothes that you've taken in, let's say a medium size of a dress or something like that, and you're trying that on, and you realize that you need a slightly smaller or slightly larger size. And so at that point, oftentimes people take in multiple sizes. It's really, really a crappy experience. And so having sort of a simple screen that can allow you to request for a larger size is going to make a huge difference. And we saw this with the implementation of these smart mirrors at Joe Fresh stores, which is our clothing line. And, there's a completely different experience that the consumers now have. And someone brings that to them, they try it on, and the conversion rate, up to about 20% conversion rate is what we've seen in this particular space. So offline is learning from online, and online is learning from offline as well. Let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot to be learned. you look at online experience, and one of the drawbacks is this idea of it being impersonal, right? It's cold, it's impersonal. There's no human to interact with, all of those things. And unless you're not a fan of people, you want to have some sort of interaction. And so you see a lot of websites today, retailers today, put in live chat, right? Put in live chat with real people so that you can have that conversation, or at least start with and then transfer over to real people. So online is also trying to learn from offline experiences as well to make it more personal. But then offline often learns bad both sides of the coin, but offline often learns bad things from online as well, the efficiency and all of those things. And the fact that now in a physical store, it's very hard to find someone that can help you, right? And so it's becoming more impersonal. And so it's really looking at what do consumers want, and again, the topic that we've been talking about, which is really what is at the core of what the consumer wants, is what we need to be able to address as an organization. And it would be a good EMBA student, to be graduate, if I didn't talk about models and frameworks, because that's all we do. But I will mention a couple that I think are worth mentioning, so that there's some actual tangible takeaways for all of you here today. When we think about innovation and we think about the work that I do in my organization, which is to help the organization really rethink or reframe a problem, be able to apply new technologies, new techniques to that problem set, so that we can solve it in a much more efficient and valuable way, just generating value, essentially. That's what it boils down to. And so some tools and frameworks that really work are, Doblin's sort of idea around where does innovation happen. So what they do is they map out, or what you can do today is when you take an idea, you can map it within these sort of structures. And for your particular business, it'll be different. For each business, it'll be a little bit different. But does it impact profit model? Does it impact the network? Does it impact the structure, physical structure of the way that you deliver the product and the configuration of it? Is it the process of delivering that product that changes? Is it the offering itself? And so within the offering, you're looking at the product performance, the product system, whatever the configuration is, whether that's color in the case of fashion, or the style, et cetera, et cetera. Or is it the experience? Is it the actual service that we're providing, like the smart mirrors that we talked about? Is it channel? Are you providing a new channel of purchasing? Is it a brand innovation? Is it innovation from a customer engagement standpoint, like we talked about with respect to having live chat as an example? It's looking at all of those things and framing it up so that you're better able to contextualize the piece of innovation that you're looking at. And innovation can't thrive without some basic principles, and agility and sort of the ability to think from the perspective of design is critical to innovation. And I think this is where most organizations sort of don't fare well, because they're not looking at innovations as a way of actually being able to drive change and drive value. Simply having an innovation team checkbox isn't enough. You need to be able to empower it with the right mechanisms that need to be in place. And so the success stories of Loblaw, as an example, are because there's the right sort of systems put in place to be able to do that. Design thinking is an example of it. The IBM, so IDOU is the one that came up with sort of the design thinking framework. IBM actually has a really great enterprise design thinking framework that's really good for large enterprises, right? And this is how you can bring in agility to a large organization. And I could do an entire hour on that particular topic. Obviously, I won't, but if you're interested, please do connect with me on this topic. And then the last thing I'll say is that innovation needs to live within the organization. And you need to design an organizational design that allows innovation to thrive. For my change management people out there, it's critical to ensure that there's an organizational and strategic fit that you've assessed. And when an idea is maybe not an organizational fit, but it's a very great strategic fit, it might be a spinoff that you might want to have, right? And so none of these are good or bad. The idea is put them in the right context. And we'll talk, if you want, we can talk a little bit about sort of the frameworks that we specifically within that to spin off, to actually have a separate organization set up within the larger organization to be able to deal with that. A lot of those things are ways of actually taking your innovation and making it happen. So what does this mean from a technology? Where does the technology meet this business problem? You notice, like, I went all this time not talking about technology, even though I work for a technology organization. And that's by design, right? You have to understand what is it that drives the need for the technology, or the need, what is the core need, and then you can apply the technology. That's really the way to go about any type of innovation. And so how can technology help? I think that technology can help in multiple different ways. I think that the first thing to say is that strategic partnerships is critical in the new age. You can't be 100% good at everything that you do. You need to partner with others to be able to do that, because the speed to market just won't be there if you try to develop it yourself. Very different from the industrial era, which was to say, build your own factories, build this, build that, take as much space as possible, right? Build as big as possible. Here we're talking about strategic partnerships. So DoorDash, as an example I just mentioned earlier, is something that Loblaw has partnered with to do that last mile delivery. And so it's important to understand where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, how can you, in the short term and the long term, create those partnerships to be able to deliver the experiences that customers are looking for. Digitizing the storefront or even the store itself to unify experiences is critical, right? And we talked, there was a question around how do you make sure that there is a unification of the digital or online experience and the physical experience. Well, an example within the retail space, and grocery retail especially, is electronic shelf lists. A simple way of being able to have the price be accurate, both online and in person. Now you can make changes to prices instantaneously, and they're matched all the way across your entire network. It's a complete game changer for retailers. And now adding more technologies on top of that to be able to tap right from the shelf edge to do multiple different things, completely changes the game, right? Using sort of AI and sort of machine learning algorithms to be able to make better decisions. So to your point earlier, Samir, you were talking about, what are some of those technologies, and it's the demand and supply, right? Like it's understanding what the demand is and understanding how we're going to be able to frame up the supply to be able to meet that. Machine learning can really help. You've done a lot of work around that, especially as it relates to how do we understand, these black swan events occurred, like COVID as an example, and how do we create models and frameworks to be able to make sense of those, and how do we create machine learning models to be able to understand that. Automation and robotics to improve colleague experience. I think there's a huge sort of misnomer that automation is all about just replacing people. That's not the point, frankly. The point is to be able to do those day tasks that otherwise people don't really want to do, right? And there's a huge shortage of people. For example, driving the middle mile, right, of food. So getting from the DC to the store, as an example. So Loblaw has looked at and is actually working with Gothic, which is a autonomous vehicle provider. And what they do is they help us deliver products to some of our manual fulfillment centers. And so if you want to learn more, you can certainly take a look at that, or we can talk about it offline as well. But this is a project that the innovation team we probably worked on to be able to incubate this idea and get it to a point where we understood and heads around it, and now is in sort of a pilot phase at the moment. And so when we look at all of these things, the last point I'll make quickly here from a technology perspective, before I talk about emerging tech for a second, is around IoT and using IoT to improve sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint. ESG is the new business model. Like that is it. Without that, organizations won't survive without that realization. And so Internet of Things, technologies that are out there are able to help us actually understand what our footprint is, first of all. I think the biggest problem that retailers have today is they don't really have a great way of being able to calculate what the carbon footprint is. So we're working actively with a lot of technology partners to obviously have ways of understanding what the footprint is, but now how do we make it a little bit more accurate? How do we make sort of using technology so that information is there at our fingertips to be able to understand exactly what our footprint was to run operations yesterday or this morning or 5 minutes ago, right? What is our carbon footprint, and how can we continue to make changes in a real way to sustainability? And then the last point I'll make, and sort of just threw in some icons at the bottom left, is around emerging tech. I mean, you can't go talk about innovation without emerging tech. And I think there's a lot to be said about the metaverse, Bitcoin, and sort of all of those things. But I think that the next big sort of frontier beyond the metaverse and those experiences is around quantum computing. And while quantum isn't really ready for prime time at the moment, there's a lot of great work being done in terms of how you take the ability to compute not with ones and zeros anymore, but with an infinite number of different possibilities. And so it completely changes the perspective and the ways in which we can analyze data and actually process this data. It's not ready for prime time, I'll be the first to say, but I think that will be a game changer in the next 10, 25 to 50 years as that those technologies become more real. So I'll end it there. Thank you very much for having me. And if you want to sort of connect, please add me on LinkedIn and we can chat.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you, Chair. I think it was a lovely presentation, and you gave a lot of insights into what lessons can innovator learn in large corporations. So I think that sets up a lot of expectations for innovations to come in the near future. Thanks a lot, Chair. And the last point which you made is very interesting, the quantum computing. I was also hearing from a great innovator in the healthcare industry, and he was speaking about that, how quantum computing is changing the healthcare space. And they are doing some great stuff there. So hopefully we'll have them in the next few events which we are lined up.
Great.
Thank you, Chair, and I love to stay connected with you and interact with you in future as well. Take care. Thanks a lot for your time. So we'll quickly go on to our last presenter for the day, as we have Raymond. I know he's waiting for that. We have some over time, but I think it's worth the time what we are spending here. So Raymond is a data management consultant, Right Data Consultants, and his topic is powering your MarTech experience with premium grade data. Over to you, Raymond. We are setting up your presentation in the meanwhile. Is there?
So I can just say that if I had taken Kai's last slide and just talk about that would give me an excellent introduction. Every one of the things that I put on there are things where there's an enormous amount of data either used or created to facilitate those things. And part of the problem is getting that data to where you can do that. I'm Ray McLeod. My last name should kind of stick with you. And I've been a data management consultant for my entire career, essentially. And spending the last, say 15 years in consumer-facing, in mostly retail, both e-commerce and in-store kinds of challenges with data. So, next slide. So, what I'm going to talk about today is, basically, in order to do all these neat things with, there's a phenomenal amount of really exciting technologies that are coming down the pipe. To do that, though, you really need to be able to evaluate how good is your organization data management maturity. If it's not mature, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get that data where it needs to be. If it's not mature, how to justify improving your data management practices. And really, your marketing technology can be a real driver to help you to get the management's attention to speed you along. And then, just a little bit about some of the methodologies that can help in moving along with that. Next. So MarTech, requires an awful lot of data. If you're looking at IoT, for example, when I got into data warehousing, I had 20 megabytes of space. Now we're talking about multi-terabytes of space. So, we've literally well over 1 million times the amount of data. So one of the things is that your MarTech needs are great, and that data must be integrated. Your sales data, your product data, your customer data, your customer interactions, both in store and online, have to be integrated to get yourself a clear, 360 picture of what your customer is trying to do. And if you are now also reaching out to the last mile, you've got to get that data to the right people, quickly in a very dynamic way. Next. So one of the things is that there's a cultural thing in companies now, and for years and years, you've had money has been managed very carefully. So if a CEO came in and started asking their CFO, questions about where the money is and so on, the CFO said, that's a good question. I wondered that myself. I'll get a couple of consultants and we'll get back to you in a couple of months. They get out of here. What the next slide shows, probably if the same questions are asked to a CIO, where's our data? What else do we have? And so on. The CEO will go, good question. I'll get some consultants. And the CEO will go, yes, go on, do that. That's a great idea. Next. So, here are some of the questions that you need to ask to determine whether or not your data management maturity is there. Is your data management team a partner? Is the data management part, is data management, not the team, but is data management itself a part of your corporate culture? Do you have definitions of your data? If you were asking about customer, if you were to look at your various systems, well, what is a customer? Is a customer somebody who's bought? Is it somebody who's bought recently? Is it anybody who is gone online and provided you with some of their personal data? So the definition of customer can vary between systems. Where your data comes from. What is the lineage of that data? How fresh is that data? If you're getting information about your customer's sales and that data doesn't come till 2 days from now, that customer is online and walked into the store, it'd be really helpful for the store person to the sales clerk to be able to help the customer based on what they were looking at. And finally, trust your data. If you're provided a report or something online, do you look at that and go, yes, that's right, or is it, I'm not so sure. Next. So it's part of the culture. So again, does the organization treat that? Are decisions made using data, or is it the gut feeling of the person is doing that? Part of the data culture is sometimes talked about the three pillars. One is data search and discovery. So just like online, if you are trying to search for an item online, or for that matter in store, how easy is it to do? How literate are people with data? Are people aware of how data gets there and various kinds of data in terms of your trust in it? So your trust in, for example, sales data should be spot on. It should reflect sales according to your definition. Data about customers, it has to be within certain limits to the customers are not always putting in the truth, so to speak. And data governance, is the data being managed with along corporate lines? And unfortunately, one survey, only 15% of organizations rank high in having a good culture. Next. Another question to ask is, are the people who use your data, do they have enormous what we call spread marks? In other words, this person has their spreadsheet, this person has their spreadsheet. So do they run it off their own spreadsheets, or do they run reports off a central repository? And if they are running the reports off their own curated spreadsheets, well, okay, what spreadsheet should be the source of your MarTech applications? I've worked in organizations where a lot of the people, these are not clerks, but the people making the technical decisions, would spend the first couple of hours of their time in the morning literally copying and pasting data into their spreadsheets. And for many people, myself included, the earlier hours in the morning are sometimes the most productive. So if you really want, your key people spending their most productive time trying to get their data together, that's going to affect things. It's going to affect things not only in the management of the business, but in also being able to react to customers. Next. So how can you justify improving this? Again, bringing it back to retail and the AI and ML, you've got to be able to feed these systems with good data, especially for something like machine learning. If you are implementing machine learning, there's two things that you need for that. The first part is to train the machine learning. And if you need to be able to provide that machine learning application with the kind of data that correctly represents what the really is going to be. So do you have a way to get that data? So you have to ask, you may have those challenges, but do other teams have those challenges? Because of the way the need to be able to integrate from multiple sources. I mean, you need to involve other pieces of your organization. So, reach out. What challenges do they have? And then, recruit them to be part of the team so that you can create federated requirements. A solution that it only works for, to the improvement of one area is not going to be nearly as important to move forward with as one that, affect multiple organizations. Document those challenges. Document the data quality, the timeliness, how easy it is to relate one data element to another. So is the product ID on your online same as the product ID that you have in your inventory system? If it's not, and you're having to build bridges between the two, that just adds an additional friction to your ability to, again, keep things up to date. And you monetize your data. So, there's always concerns with exposing, a customer PII to outside. And I'm in no way suggesting that you sell your customer PII data, but there are a lot of areas, especially where you can take aggregated data and be able to actually sell that or trade that with other organizations. I like to say, if you're in the jewelry world, maybe Tractor Supply Company has some data that's going to be useful. Obviously, not in the same competitive space, but there may be some customer behaviors that might be helpful. And indeed, especially since we are moving to the cloud, marketplaces exist that you can go online and literally buy the pieces of data or sell the pieces of data that you for organizations like, for example, AccuWeather, that provides this data in the cloud. And retail organizations who want to have, not just forecast data, but historical data to see how that affects, store profitability or the number of people showing up to a store, can buy that data from AccuWeather and have it literally integrated into their reporting systems, so that if you know that you need to staff up the store tomorrow based on historical as well as today's weather forecast, you can make that earlier on. Next. So in order to do this, this is a team effort, and you are part of the team. This is not something that somebody can do, often do by themselves. I would suggest that you get out in front of your, in front of these challenges. Basically, you've got to keep your management team informed of these challenges, because you're going to be, they have to take the story up the chain of command to help you. And I would also suggest that part of getting out in front of these challenges is to become knowledgeable on data management topics. And if people reach out to me later and ask, for some of the resources that would be helpful, I'd be glad to do that. If you don't have for example, if you don't have a data dictionary, if you don't have definitions for your critical pieces of data, offer to serve as a subject matter expert in the area that you know. And remember, of course, that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Next. This is just a little bit about the agile, the methodology that you can use to to get down this data management journey. The agile methodology is really a way to move forward with developing solutions to your problems in a way that it facilitates the collaboration. So what you basically do is you identify the areas of the business, of the data movement functions that need to be improved. You go through the effort of working with other organizations, other teams within your organization, to get those priorities federated. So we have we're not just working out here in the desert somewhere, and not just get those priorities, but keep it fresh. There's nothing worse than coming up with and working on a problem that's no longer a problem, or that problem is no longer top of mind. So this is a way to keep you and your development organization in sync, in ways to keep the work that's being done efficient, and to satisfy the needs of the of you and your rest of the organization. Again, a lot of the work that's going to be done, that needs to be done, is in integrating that data together. One of the challenges that I've found in working in the marketing technology sphere is that the schedule, or that you start out with can be severely impacted by lack of access to the data. So if you are considering any kinds of applications, for example, a customer data platform is one where you now take the customer's behavior online and in store, bring it together. That is going to take, you need to hook that thing up to both your sales system, your customer system, your click stream that you're getting from something like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, as well as your CRM system, again, so that you keep a fresh 360 view of your particular customer, so that you can get to the point where you can personalize the work that you're doing. So it's a way to facilitate continuous collaboration across the relevant pieces of the organization. Next. And this is just something, again, if you're in the retail space and you're working with your IT organization, ask them if they are using Agile. If great, if yes, if no, then become familiar with Agile and advocate for it. And again, the important piece about Agile is the collaboration between the business, incremental progress. There's no idea of a beginning. There's nothing. I literally worked in a project once where we started off. We had all the the right stuff. We did a great job of analyzing the problem. We thought. We got to the end of the project. We had 6 people involved for 6 months, so there was a fairly good investment in time and resources. When we were done, we sat and the VP of the organization said, "Well, you did a great job on the project, but it's totally useless." So it's you never want to be a part of that kind of a project, and so agile processes help you to get to where you want to go, and it really does help marketing and sales become more responsive to the customer. Next. So, in conclusion, data is a powerful fuel. Make sure that you have the premium version of that fuel. Make sure you have data that's timely, that's correct, that is going to the right people, at the right time. Make sure that it's well integrated. Make sure that you have those things in place, or at least on a path to getting those things in place before you start to take plans to really integrate some of these new technologies coming down the pike. Because if you don't, you may be severely impacted, and your schedules are going to go out the door. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And have a great day.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for your lovely thought and taking the presentation forward. So we'll just wait for 1 minute in case any question is there. Otherwise, we'll wrap up the session. But yeah, thanks a lot, Raymond, once again for giving your thought process to this whole series of retail event which we have today. I hope everyone who attended this must have learned a lot from the great speakers who have given a lot of things, plus the panel discussion which we had. It was also very interesting. And if anyone wants to reach out to Raymond, obviously you can connect with him in LinkedIn. That's the best source to reach out and stay connected. Thank you, Raymond, for your time, and would love to stay connected with you for future events as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, just to wrap up, from our side, we'd like to thank InfoVision, which is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7, which is technology partner. Digit7 also have a great innovation lab of 15,000 square feet in Richardson, Texas. And any one of you who are dropping by can always go to the office and have a look to feel that. To understand more in depth, connect with them, and to suggest any aspect, all of you can go through their website, which is infovision.com, and Digit7 closely liaison with them. Also, we would like to thank our community partners, speakers, and attendees who came together for enriching knowledge through this forum. We had a great set of speakers who came together to share thoughts. Just for your information, who joined late, today's event was broadcasted on the YouTube and Facebook page of our company. So all of you can go and see the recording anytime. Please log on to our website and like the social media channels. We'll be sharing lots of knowledge sharing topics, details, announcement of next events, and much more, which will help you register and save. There'll be for subsequent months as well, with focus on testing, banking, financial, insurance, telecom, retail, healthcare, supply chain, manufacturing, and so on. So request all of you to stay connected with us and enjoy the learning. Thanks, and do take care, good care of yourself. Have a lovely day and week ahead. Bye.